Part 87. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 893. Door. Hearing this word, Hua Weiniang's eyes revealed a strange look. I know you are looking for that door. In fact, I am looking for it too, and I have found it. You want to lie to me. Hua Weiniang obviously didn't believe Su Tong's nonsense. If you find that door, why don't you take your people and leave? Why bother to take a trip into this muddy water? Su Tong rolled his eyes when he heard this and looked sideways at Chen Wangshen. It's not the good thing he did. If it weren't for the 5 defects of heaven and man, I would have left long ago. What's more, that door is a bit strange and I can't open it. Su Tong looked embarrassed as he described the door. That door is very strange. It is not in reality, nor in the cave, but more like it is in the gap between reality and reality. After hearing Su Tong's words, Hua Weiniang was immediately moved. The reason why these gods who have been forgotten by the world gathered here is not because the end of the world is coming, and the era will soon undergo major changes that have not happened in thousands of years. Originally, they could still survive by relying on the weak incense in the world and the capital they had accumulated. However, if they wait for the end of the Dharma age to truly come, they will completely lose their foothold and will eventually be completely crushed under the wheels of the Dharma ending age. So when she heard about the existence of this door, Hua Weiniang was obviously interested. Where's the door? Hua Weiniang asked. Su Tong pouted, I want the Dragon Ball. Give me the Dragon Ball and I will take you there. Besides, I don't want to see this villain. The villain Su Tong mentioned was naturally the pharmacist on the side. Don't believe him, this guy is a liar, you can't believe a word he says. The pharmacist noticed the way Su Tong looked at him, his heart froze, and he immediately said to Hua Weiniang. Hua Weiniang frowned, walked up to Chen Wangshen, reached out and grabbed the shrine in Mao Suifeng's chest, and pulled hard, and Chen Wangshen, who was no longer struggling, was pulled out. Without Chen Wangshen's power, Mao Suifeng's expression instantly shrank, but he did not die, but his empty eyes became even more empty. The Warren girl held Chen Wangshen in her hands and looked at Su Tong from the side. I am very tempted by what you said, but, I can find the door myself, but you must die. Su Tong poses too great a threat to Hua Weiniang. If he is not killed now, Hua Weiniang will really have trouble sleeping and eating. After saying that, he opened his mouth and bit off Chen Wangshen's head, and then sucked it hard. The remaining body of Chen Wangshen was suddenly swallowed directly into the mouth by the Warren. Chen Wangshen's power was absorbed by Hua Weiniang, further strengthening her power. The trees and vines under their feet began to grow wildly, and the originally muddy black soil was instantly covered by thick green plants, absorbing Chen Wangshen. She was the new owner of this cave world, and everything in this cave world would be controlled by her. Su Tong's face also began to look painful. A streak of blood exploded from his chest, blood spurted out, and the hegemonic state on his body quickly disappeared, causing Gao Zhou and others' expressions to change drastically. Head. Gao Zhou's shouts echoed in his ears, as if there was an extra whirlpool in his chest, frantically devouring his life force. This is not my script. Su Tong turned around and looked at the expressions on the faces of Gao Zhou and the others, and his vision gradually began to blur. Ha ha ha, dead, dead. Seeing Su Tong's body lying on the ground, the pharmacist on the side danced with excitement. He even didn't forget to laugh at Akimaru and the others beside him. I asked you to take action, but if you don't take action, now such a big piece of cake will be gone, ha ha ha. Akimaru twitched the corner of his mouth and glared at the pharmacist fiercely. The pharmacist knew that he was no match for Akimaru, so he quickly hid beside Hua Weiniang, pointed at the figures of Gao Zhou and others, and said, What are you still doing? Kill. As soon as these words came out, several Japanese players finally couldn't bear it anymore. This time they would no longer heed Akimaru's advice and rushed towards Gaozhou and the others. Sudden. Several people screamed and rushed towards the nearest people. Seeing this, Akimaru wanted to follow him, but before he could do anything, he suddenly saw Su Tong slowly getting up from the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. He's not dead. The faces of the Japanese players who had already rushed forward turned pale in an instant, and they didn't know whether to put down the swords they held high in their hands. No, he's already dead. After Hua Weiniang was briefly surprised, she soon realized that Su Tong could not still be alive. It was some kind of special force that was barely keeping him alive. The great sun makes you wishful thinking. Sure enough, the first thing Su Tong did when he got up was to summon the great Sun Ruyi furnace. Suddenly, the furnace boiled, and a massive amount of life force poured down like a waterfall, quickly healing Su Tong's wounds. Yellow quartz fruit, rare. Holding this thing, the living will not fall into hell, and the dead will not scatter their spirits. Passive skill 1, Death Delay. When the holder suffers fatal damage, the passive effect is triggered. After triggering, it can keep the holder alive for 3 hours. Damage received during this period is reduced by 20%. Cooling time, 30 days. This item is a prop card given to Su Tong by King Linghuo when he was in the underworld Urn City. I thought that this thing would not be used for a while, but unexpectedly it turned out to be of great use, but the process was not comfortable. Stop him. There is still a chance. The pharmacist screamed, and anyone with a discerning eye could see that Su Tong's current situation was not optimistic, and it was the last chance to kill him completely. In fact, there is no need for the pharmacist to speak, Hua Weiniang has already taken action. A black branch with slender hairs wrapped around it appeared on Hua Weiniang's hand and a black and cold curse hit Su Tong. Facing Hua Weiniang's attack, Su Tong did not dodge and allowed the opponent to hit him hard. Blood spattered for a moment, and the wound that was originally intended to heal was torn apart again in an instant. A wave of resentment wrapped around Su Tong's wound, trying to prevent him from recovering. Such unavoidable behavior once again left everyone confused, but at this moment, a scream came from the pharmacist who was vomiting blood in his mouth and looking at the scars on his body with confusion on his face. There was a sense of resentment exuding from the black wound, which was clearly the same as the injury Su Tong suffered. How so? The pharmacist raised his head with a strange expression. But just then he saw Su Tong squinting his eyes and staring at him with a smile. I told you, you will never leave my team. The joking look in his eyes showed such madness that it made the pharmacist's scalp tingle. It's not just Su Tong and Yao Shi who are injured. In the face of Guardian's skill, all team members will share the damage equally. Active Skill 1, Righteousness. It consumes 30 script points. After activation, when there are more than 2 teammates within 30 meters of you, the damage you receive will be shared equally. This is why Su Tong knew that Yaoshi was a man with many evil thoughts, but still insisted on recruiting him into his team. If he didn't join his team, form an alliance, or join Guo Xiang's Ling team, it would be really difficult to kill him. But he chose to join his own team. How long do you think you can last? The flower Sephora lady on the side didn't care so much. Since Su Tong wouldn't dodge, she wouldn't give up this opportunity. She waved the branch in her hand and hit Su Tong with a steady stream of curses. For a moment, the bodies of everyone in the team trembled slightly, but the great Sun Ruyi Road above Su Tong's head was like a crazy blood fountain, continuously injecting the power of life into their bodies. Coupled with the blessing effect of Golden Saint Great Essence liquid for them, even if the medicine is made crazy by the medicine master's ability, the positive effect is still there, at least the damage received will be greatly reduced under the influence of the hegemonic body. Only the unlucky guy, medicine master, is truly in a situation where life is worse than death at this moment. A steady stream of injuries were being dealt to him, and in an instant, 7 or 8 kinds of curses were wrapped around him. The pharmacist kept taking out various potions from the prop book to treat himself, but no matter what, the wounds became more and more numerous, making him worse than death. Looking at the scene from afar, Akimaru and others were all shocked by Su Tong's methods. At this time, the pharmacist also realized that he had fallen into Su Tong's trap, and immediately applied to withdraw from Su Tong's team. But the result surprised him. Ding, if you try to withdraw from 7 gates, you need to pay 80,000 script points as liquidated damages. 80,000. When he saw this number, the pharmacist almost spit out a mouthful of blood. Why didn't he grab it? The figure of 80,000 liquidated damages was not determined by Su Tong, but was calculated by space. Because of his status as a core member, and when Su Tong joined the team, he opened up almost all permissions, including team skills, to the pharmacist. He looked like he was confiding, but in fact, he had been preventing him from escaping for a long time. 80,000 script points, a lot. It's not much for Su Tong, even the Ling team can come up with it. But for the pharmacist, he can't get this money out. The amount of money he got from other teams is actually not that much. It is mainly script points from other teams. Most of them will not be placed in the team warehouse. The team warehouse contains mostly rare material resources. In addition, he has to prepare potions, which is also a money-consuming ability, and he only has 40,000 script points for all the calculations. Seeing that he could not withdraw from the team, the pharmacist struggled to get up and tried to stop Hua Weiniang. However, instead of stopping, Hua Weiniang waved the branch in her hand and flew the pharmacist away. At this point, Hua Weiniang couldn't possibly let Su Tong survive. Let's see how long you can last. Hua Weiniang's whole body was boiling with resentment, and the branch in her hand turned into a black cursed blade and struck Su Tong. This time Su Tong did not resist, but still did not dodge, but a golden light appeared between his eyebrows, and the diamond mark was activated by him. In an instant, his whole body was covered in golden light, and the delicate dragon scales also wrapped him. Boom! There was a dull collision sound, and Su Tong snorted, and couldn't help but take 2 steps back, with bright red blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. But the pharmacist was miserable. He screamed and flew backwards. His muscles atrophied and he struggled to escape. Come back. Su Tong raised his hand and summoned the innate talisman and dragon talisman, wrapped the pharmacist into a rice dumpling, and pulled him back bit by bit. Captain, I was wrong, let me go, I was obsessed for a moment, please let me go, I was really wrong. The pharmacist's screams became more and more harsh, but Su Tong had no intention of letting him go. He pulled him to his side, put a hand on his shoulder, and stared directly at the pharmacist's fearful face. A ferocious smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. You are dreaming. Sorry, I finished writing an update before, but the quality of which chapter was too slow, I deleted it and rewrote it, and the update is a bit late. I will try my best to update the next one before 12 o'clock. If there is no update, it will be around early morning. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 894. In fact, Su Tong didn't have much hatred for the pharmacist. He knew that what happened back then was more of a trap set by the master himself. So he was willing to give Shishi a chance, but he obviously didn't cherish it, and even shamelessly said such things to Gaozhou. How could he let him survive? This is not only what Su Tong means, but also what the entire Kimin team means. Compared with those enemy and alliance players, the betrayers deserve to be cut to pieces by 1,000 cuts. After Su Tong said this, he suddenly rushed towards Hua Weiniang, completely giving up his defense, causing Hua Weiniang to be in chaos for a moment. He saw the black water dragon tooth being held in Su Tong's hand, facing Hua Weiniang's short hand. The sword struck forward. Boom! With the blessing of the blood curse whetstone, Black water dragon tooth sliced through the dagger in Hua Weiniang's hand, and then cut a huge wound on Hua Weiniang's chest. At the same time, Hua Weiniang's other hand slapped Su Tong's chest hard. At this moment, the pharmacist's face instantly turned pale, and his body limply fell out of Su Tong's arms, falling heavily to the ground. Looking at Su Tong's back with unwillingness and resentment in his eyes, he probably never thought that he would die in such a way one day. If you don't let me live, ahem, I won't let you live either. The pharmacist struggled to take out a bottle of potion from the prop book. This potion is completely different from the potion used by the pharmacist before. The potion in this bottle exudes an ominous smell. If you look carefully, the liquid inside is still flowing, constantly changing into strange spells, and it looks like a human face, emitting a harsh cry. Voice. This potion is said to be part of the ancient god's blood, which the pharmacist found in the team warehouse of the previous team. But since he couldn't identify it, he wasn't sure how to use it. But what is certain is that the energy contained in this bottle of potion is extremely amazing. The pharmacist struggled to get up, but there were so many curses on his body that even breathing was a luxury. He called out the prop book and looked at the rare prop in the prop book. It was his last trump card cooling acceleration potion. He took out the potion and drank it in one gulp. With the entrance of the potion, all skills that had been used and were on cooldown were restored to their cooldown time. Pharmamania. Holding the bottle of ancient god's blood in his hand, he activated the medicinal mania again. Suddenly, the medicine in the bottle began to boil, and the evil blood suddenly turned bright red and hot. Just when the pharmacist wanted to drink the bottle of medicine in one gulp, Su Tong and Hua Weiniang collided again, causing a huge pain in his heart. With a tremble of his fingers, the potion slipped from his palm. At the moment when the potion was about to fall, a hand quietly lifted the potion. He caught it in his hand. Looking at the same withered palm, the pharmacist opened his eyes wide and saw Mao Suifeng appearing beside him at some point. After making a silent gesture towards him, he took the bottle of medicine without hesitation. Drink it in one gulp. Ding. Medicine Master, a member of the Seven Gates team, dies. Warning: core members die. A prompt sounded in everyone's ears, confirming that the pharmacist was dead. The pharmacist's methods are actually very clever. Who would have thought that as an excellent pharmacy assistant, he would harbor such evil intentions? No one would have thought that his prop card could turn enhanced drugs into a harmful trap in an instant. If the pharmacist hadn't had a blacklist experience with Su Tong, and Su Tong was always wary of him, I'm afraid if it were another team, such as the Ling group of Tai Xiao and others, they would have been tricked by this time. But now the pharmacist is dead. Whether this prop card disappears or is recycled by space, I am afraid it will not appear again in a short time. Ding. Your teammate dies, the Guardian passive effect is activated, and you get a 40% increase in all attributes. Passive skill 2, Brave. When your teammate dies, you temporarily gain a 40% increase in all attributes. The pharmacist would never have thought until his death that his death would actually provide Su Tong with another powerful improvement. The battle between Hua Weiniang and Su Tong was particularly difficult. At this moment, Su Tong's strength increased again, his aura increased greatly, and even the speed of wound recovery suddenly increased significantly. Boom! The dull sound of collision sounded again, and Su Tong could be seen pinching the Vajra seal with his left hand and holding the black water dragon fang with his right hand. The 8 Vajra Dharma appearances appeared behind him and were crushed mercilessly. If it's Gen Mansai Musashi, he might be able to fight with me, but you are far from my opponent. Su Tong smacked it with his palm, King Kong glared angrily, and the 8 Dharma figures waved their magic weapons and attacked Hua Weiniang. Now Hua Weiniang couldn't resist it. As Su Tong said, her fighting ability is far inferior to that of Mansai Musashi Gen. Otherwise, I would not choose to cooperate with a pharmacist. Even though he devoured 2 companions, he was just a god forgotten by the world after all. He was playing tricks and casting curses. They might be okay, but in a head-on collision, Su Tong didn't tolerate her at all. The Vajrasil and Sumerusil alternate with each other, making the space around Huawei sometimes close and sometimes far away, and the black water dragon tooth in Su Tong's hand is specially designed to restrain her. It is blessed with the blood curse whetstone that can it truly stabbed her soul. You had such a good time beating us just now, now I'll give it back to you. I saw Su Tong suddenly appeared in front of Huawei Niang, activated the dragon talisman, rolled it around Huawei Niang's waist, and then pulled hard, and actually pulled Huawei Niang down, and with Su Tong's movement and fell beside Gao Zhou and others. Team skill, Bloody Rose. For a moment, Gao Zhou and others released the rose mark on their bodies at the same time. It turns out that the injuries they shared from Su Tong just now were not in vain. Every injury was adding a rose mark to them. At this moment, they were all released, forming a terrible shock wave, which instantly exploded the surrounding mud and rocks, sending sand and rocks flying, cutting the ground into flat ground. This scene made several Japanese players who originally wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to make a sneak attack feel terrified. Fortunately, they didn't dare to rush in and take advantage of the fire, otherwise, this time, I'm afraid they would be crippled even if they didn't die. It's so perverted, I can't stand it anymore. A Japanese player screamed, turned around and ran away. Their mission had actually failed, and the ferocity of Su Tong and others in front of them was completely beyond their imagination. If they don't run away now, when Su Tong frees his hands later, none of them will be able to escape. Stop running around and follow me. Akimaru suddenly spoke at this time and led a few people to run towards the Kowloon walled city. Because Akimaru's wise move before prevented them from attacking Su Tong rashly, now in the eyes of all the Japs players, Akimaru he has changed from that brainless and reckless man to a wise and mighty leader. So there was no need to think about what Akimaru would do, and he just followed Akimaru. On the other side, receiving the shockwave from Su Tong and others' Bloody Rose, Huawei Niang finally couldn't resist it, her body flew out and fell heavily to the ground. Su Tong stepped forward and pressed the black water dragon tooth against Huawei Niang's throat. Give me the dragon balls and get out of my friend's body. Su Tong did not kill him immediately, not only because of Longju, nor entirely because of Guoxiang, but because he knew that the shrine of Huawei Niang was not in Guoxiang's body. The main mission is to destroy 7 shrines. 6 of them have been destroyed now, and only the shrine of Huawei Niang remains. Humph, you want the dragon balls? Find them yourself. Huawei Niang snorted coldly. In today's situation, she had no way to retreat. In this case, she would not be able to fulfill Su Tong's wish. And as long as her shrine is not destroyed, this cave will still be her territory sooner or later. Seeing that this girl would not give up until she reached the Yellow River, Su Tong was too lazy to talk nonsense with her. He had his own way to deal with Huawei Niang. Just when Su Tong was about to take action, a rotten stench hit the air. Su Tong looked down and found black blood surging out of nowhere on the ground. What's this? Su Tong raised his head and took a look, only to see that the source of the black blood turned out to be Mao Suifeng. At this moment, Mao Suifeng was raising his head and looking at him. His empty eyes gradually became gloomy, and he let out a sharp roar. A voice came from the empty shrine in his heart, "You are all going to die. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 895. Before Mao Suifeng could even finish his words, his body began to dissolve into large pieces of black blood. Once the blood spread, it quickly dissolved all surrounding objects. Not good. The familiar scene made Su Tong's expression change drastically. He grabbed Huaniang on the ground and quickly moved back. At the same time, the other hand released the dragon beaming talisman, rolled up Gao Zhou and others, and pulled them directly to him. Gilialu. Blood and water surged on the ground, which was very similar to the ability of Big Mouth that he had encountered before, but it was far more domineering than Big Mouth's ability. The Big Mouth can only devour those resentful demons, but the blood in front of him is swallowing everything in its path. Don't you want the Dragon Ball? Here it is. Just when Su Tong pulled everyone back quickly, Huaniang suddenly spoke to Su Tong, then spit out a Dragon Ball from her mouth and threw it towards Su Tong. Su Tong instinctively slapped the Dragon Ball away. At that moment, Huaniang seized the opportunity, grabbed Su Tong's joints with her hands, and sank down hard, intending to jump into the bloody water with Su Tong. You wanna die? Su Tong was shocked and angry, and kicked Huaniang in the face, sending her flying directly into the dark blood in front of her. Plop, with a sound, blood poured into Guoxiang's body like thick mud, quickly decomposing her skin and flesh. Huaniang didn't struggle, she just stared at Su Tong with a sneer, her lips moved slightly. You are all going to die. Su Tong didn't waste any time. He raised his hand and struck Huaniang with a thunderbolt, driving her completely into the bloody water. This bitch, relying on his shrine not being destroyed, probably sacrificed his life to feed the black blood. After the black blood in front of him absorbed the sky, it began to expand rapidly. Head, go quickly. Although Gao Zhou couldn't move, he was able to summon a few zombies, pick him up, Gu Zibai, and Chang Wogu and run back. Su Tong looked back and saw that the blood was boiling. After absorbing Huaniang, it instantly rolled up 3 meters high and slammed down heavily. In an instant, it swallowed the body of Mansai Musashi Gen. Seeing this, he frowned for a moment. It seems that Ameda's matter can only be postponed. Originally, I kept Guoxiang because I wanted to use Guoxiang's body to help Ameda complete the body seizure. After all, Guoxiang devoured Chen Wangshen, so there was no way the mark would be in her body. But now I don't care about that much anymore. Su Tong retreated and summoned the Xian Yuan shield at the same time. A cold blue light flickered in the shield's light, and dense icicles flew out, instantly causing the surrounding temperature to drop below zero. However, the cold air that could freeze the river water did not freeze the blood water, but was swallowed up by the blood water. Su Tong then tried to use thunder and lightning, vermilion fire, and even Sumi seal. Instead of stopping the blood from spreading, he was completely swallowed by the blood. In the rolling blood, an empty shrine appeared and disappeared. Su Tong saw a familiar figure in the shrine. It was Mao Suifeng. At this moment, Mao Suifeng was confused and his empty pupils were filled with despair for this world. Zhao Suifeng, wake up. Su Tong tried to wake him up, but he was different from other people who had their bodies taken away and parasitized. Perhaps because Mao Suifeng had the same ideas as him, or perhaps because Mao Suifeng was able to discover the existence of the door, Chen Wangshen did not erase Mao Suifeng's will. Su Tong tried to wake him up, but the effect was not good, and soon the shrine sank into the depths of blood again. The blood tide grew louder and louder. When Su Tong and others retreated to Kowloon walled city, the cave world in front of them was completely surrounded by blood and water. If you were standing outside the cave sky at this moment, you would see that the dark clouds that were originally deposited on the Kowloon walled city were now as red as blood. When large drops of blood dripped from it, those residents who had not left Kowloon walled city had no time to run away. The world of Dongtian has been completely integrated with reality. Soon, a rain of stray blood poured down. The rainwater was extremely corrosive and penetrated directly through the floor. Those residents who had not yet moved out quickly lost consciousness and fell into a pool of blood after being contaminated with blood. However, at this moment, their souls were quietly swept into the blood cloud above their heads. Oh my God. Bishop Simpson and a group of monks looked at the red clouds rippling in the distance and were dumbfounded. They put the cross on their chests and prayed silently. Quick, send a telegram to Archbishop Dale and ask him to come here as soon as possible. Simpson sent a person to report the news, and then thought for a moment, quick, everyone follow me into the church, ring the bells, and let's pray for the sun. Su Tong didn't know when the Archbishop Simpson was talking about would come, but the current situation completely exceeded their expectations. Bloody water soaked into the Kowloon-walled city in front of him, and many buildings began to corrode and collapse rapidly. Seeing this scene, Gao Zhou's scalp went numb. Boss, what should we do next? There are too many things. Even if you take out the 9 Immortals cauldron, you can't stuff them all in. Gao Zhou looked at Su Tong and looked out from a high place. The whole world had turned into a sea of blood and water. Soon, the Kowloon-walled city would be completely swallowed up. Evacuate, everyone run to the roof, hurry up. Su Tong also knew in his heart that although the big killer weapon in his hand could easily wipe out gods that were more powerful than himself, it could not do anything about the blood tide in front of him. He immediately told Gao Zhou and others to run to the roof, while he rushed to room 404, where the eldest princess was still waiting. The original plan was for the eldest princess to hide in the room, and he would use the door as a bait to lure Chen Wangshen or Mansai Musashi Gento to come. At that time, the eldest princess would take the opportunity to make a sneak attack and use the mountain buckle to send the other party directly to his master's wife. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes, and Su Tong did not expect that it would turn out like this. At the moment, I can only call the eldest princess, and then go to the top of the building to send everyone between reality and reality, while I use the nightmare bone ring to forcefully leave the cave. As for the price of failing the main mission, Su Tong felt that he could still afford it. However, when he rushed over, he found that the eldest princess was not in the room, not there. Just when Su Tong was confused, Gao Zhou's roar came from the team channel, "Head, the eldest princess is outside, she is inside the blood tide." What? Su Tong was startled when he heard the words, turned around and ran out the door to take a look. Sure enough, in the sea of blood surging in the distance, the eldest princess actually stood tall in the sea of blood, summoning waves of black water to collide with the sea of blood. For a moment, the endless black water merged with the blood tide, making a huge thunderous rumble. Seeing this, Su Tong's face changed slightly. He rushed forward and grabbed the eldest princess's wrist. "Quickly go." However, the eldest princess cleverly pushed Su Tong's hand away and looked at Su Tong calmly. "If you leave now, the world will be destroyed. If it's destroyed, it's destroyed. What does it have to do with us?" Su Tong frowned. According to the master, the script world is just a reflection of reality, not the real world. Even if it is destroyed, it will not. What impact does it have on reality? Hearing this, the eldest princess looked back at Su Tong and asked, "What if I don't want it to be ruined?" This sentence made Su Tong stunned for a few seconds. Is it because of that door? It has nothing to do with the door. "I want to leave at any time." The eldest princess denied Su Tong's statement and just looked at the sea of blood in front of her. "This is an opportunity." "What chance?" "The opportunity to jump out of the chessboard. How long do you want to be a chess piece, being thrown into a strange world like a chess piece again and again?" As soon as these words came out, Su Tong immediately froze on the spot as if he had been struck by lightning. In fact, Su Tong has also been thinking about this problem. Will players eventually have to enter the script world again and again to take risks until they die in the script world? And what is the identity of the player? What role does it play? Who I am? I am Su Tong, the afterglow of the doomsday, the playboy Ma Hongwen, the saint son Kevin Corleone, the upright official Li Zheng, and the rude and grassroots Du Anan. Who is next? Sometimes, after playing the role so many times, Su Tong himself can't tell what kind of person he is. When he was in the underworld, he risked his life to climb the mountain to find this answer. But all he got was one pine nut. Although Mr. May said it was a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, Su Tong didn't feel happy because it was not the answer he wanted. At this time, the eldest princess stretched out her hand to call out the black water and shattered the sea of blood in front of her. Don't you want the truth? Stop it and I will tell you the so-called truth. After hearing what the eldest princess said, Su Tong took a deep breath and his eyes suddenly became sharp. Okay, I also want to see what the so-called truth is. As he spoke, he saw him summoning the pure yang sword. What to do? I'll separate the blood tide, and you find a way to destroy the shrine. After the eldest princess finished speaking, 3 dao fruits and the crooked-necked old tree appeared behind her. Under the eldest princess's influence, the old tree trembled slightly, and countless black water gathered in front of the two of them, like a giant black dragon, rushing into the blood tide. They're crazy. When everyone in the distance saw this scene, whether it was the Iron Hands of the Ridge Group or Akimaru and others, they all found it difficult to understand. Isn't this seeking death? What on earth is he going to do? In the horrified eyes of everyone, they saw an indescribable aura rising from the eldest princess's body. A thought flashed between her eyebrows, and she controlled the infinite black water without any reservation. Open it. Rumble, rumble. The blood boiled for a moment, and in the horrified eyes of everyone, the blood in front of them was torn open. The huge waves on the water formed a wave and hit the buildings of Kowloon walled city. In an instant, the entire walled city suddenly sank, and everyone secretly screamed that it was terrible. Large cracks tore from the building. The building on the left is completely tilted, like a sugar cube thrown into hot coffee, quickly dissolving. Run. Unfortunately, Akimaru and others happened to be hiding here. Seeing that the building was about to collapse, the group could only rush to another building crazily. Rumble, rumble. Countless rubble exploded, and the tilt of the building became larger and larger. Akimaru rushed to the front, looking at the broken corridor in the distance, and screamed, "Everyone, hold me tight, I will lead you to rush over." As Akimaru spoke, he summoned a giant fan that could summon the wind from the prop book. When everyone saw this, they immediately understood Akimaru's thoughts, and immediately hugged Akimaru's waist tightly. Hurry up. Akimaru took a deep breath and used all his strength to raise the fan high above his head. Just when everyone thought that Akimaru was going to use the power of the strong wind to take everyone out of the building, this guy suddenly showed a cruel smile. "Everyone, I forgot to mention something." Everyone was startled, not knowing what Akimaru was going to say, but they saw him suddenly turning around and pointing at the broken corridor in front. "I'm sorry, Xiaoshan is not the only one with the inner ghost, I am too." The moment he finished speaking, Akimaru had already waved the fan in his hand heavily. In an instant, the hurricane enveloped everyone's bodies and fell backwards with the broken building. Akimaru's actions surprised everyone, but at the same time, everyone received a message from a special channel. The message that came turned out to be a message from Akimaru: "Everyone, I wish you good luck." This guy, Gu Zibai, just suspected that Xiaoshan was a traitor. He didn't expect that there was also a traitor on the Japanese player's side, let alone the reckless man Akimaru. This guy had the image of a headless and reckless man from the beginning, but now that I think about it, he was so realistic. At this time, the constant reminder sounds rang in everyone's ears. Ding! The Alliance mission is over, points are being calculated. Ding! More than 90% of the enemy and Alliance players have been killed or injured. The judgment fails and your side wins. Ding! The Alliance points ranking will be calculated later. Ding! The Alliance mission has ended, you can choose to return. Tip: since you have not completed the main mission, if you choose to return, most of this reward will be deducted, and only the Alliance Points award will be retained. It's time to come back. Hearing the prompt, everyone became excited, especially the three Iron Hands. They naturally didn't want to stay in this ghost place for another moment, and naturally wanted to return as soon as possible. However, when Tai Xiao was about to choose to return, Xiao Shan beside him suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood, and then fell to the ground and twitched violently. Hill. The Iron Hand hurriedly pulled up the hill, but when his hand touched the hill, he found that the hill was no longer breathing. The reward for the traitor is very generous, but the punishment is also extremely serious. If the mission just fails, a part of the script points may be deducted. However, at the last moment, Akimura gained enough trust and threw the remaining players into the bloody tide, causing total defeat. The price Xiaoshan paid now was his own life. It cannot be said that he did too little, but compared to the cunning Akimura, Koyama's performance can only be described as poor. Return. The loss of the team this time made Tai Xiao feel despair. He could only grit his teeth and choose to return as soon as possible. Perhaps he could use the intelligence of Chi Sect to get more support from some senior officials in Mo Sect to save their team from this disastrous defeat. Loss. Head, we can return. Gao Zhou shouted in the team channel. But Su Tong didn't pay any attention to it. Seeing the eldest princess split the blood tide in front of her into two, Su Tong discovered that the ground of the cave had long been swallowed up by blood. A huge crack could hardly be seen at the bottom, only a dark abyss. 5 minutes. The eldest princess looked at Su Tong. 5 minutes was the limit she could hold on to. If Su Tong couldn't destroy the shrine within 5 minutes, she would have to return to reality immediately, but she would stay here. Okay, Su Tong simply agreed, waving the pure yang sword, and jumped down the crack in front of him. Crazy. Gao Zhou and his group were lying on the roof watching, their eyes widened when they saw what happened, and they wanted to rush to help, but they couldn't move at all, so they could only watch helplessly. Swish swish. After Su Tong jumped out of the crack, there would be red water jets around him from time to time, forcibly tearing open the eldest princess's black water, like a wild python coming out of its hole and rushing towards Su Tong. Seeing this, Su Tong waved the pure yang sword in his hand and used Tai Chi sword skills. The sword edge seemed fast and slow, and layers of sword energy formed a strong wind around him, tightly wrapping Su Tong in it. Bang bang bang. One after another, water pillars hit the sword energy, and were immediately dispersed by layers of pure yang sword energy. I want to know the truth about the players. I have had enough of this puppet-like life. Thinking of this, Su Tong summoned the cold iron gourd from the prop book and pulled out the stopper of the gourd. A burst of cold air spurted out from the gourd, accelerating Su Tong's fall. In an instant, Su Tong saw a shrine wrapped in black mist under the crack. Found it? Seeing this shrine, Su Tong quickly put on the black water dragon fang and jumped forward. Get away! However, at this moment, Mao Suifeng, who was sitting in the shrine, suddenly opened his eyes. In his empty eyes, there was a twist of hatred. Blood and water surged around him. A powerful divine power suddenly appeared from Mao Suifeng. Feng's body gushed out. Who is this? Su Tong was shocked. Such power should not appear in Mao Suifeng. Come on, there's a big problem with this guy. A modest scream came from Su Tong's mind. He was always preparing to seize the body, so he kept staring at Su Tong silently. Even if there was a little hope, he would not give up easily. But at this moment, he was screaming for Su Tong to leave as soon as possible. Boom! A blood-red palm crushed the eldest princess's black water and grabbed Su Tong from the side. Looking at the bloody hand in front of him, Su Tong's pupils jumped. He ignored a meta scream and instead ran head-on into the bloody water. Why don't you come out yet? In the distance, Gao Zhou and others were waiting anxiously, hoping that Su Tong would rush out of the blood tide next moment. At this moment, Gao Zhou suddenly felt someone pulling on him. When he looked back, he found that it was Maida. Maida pointed to the ground and saw a line of small words written on the ground. "Are you afraid of pain?" Gao Zhou was stunned for a moment. He didn't know why Maida would ask him this. He shook his head for a moment. "What are you going to do?" Maida stuffed the dragon ball she just picked up into Gao Zhou's hand, then hugged Gao Zhou, opened her mouth to reveal a single tooth, and bit down on Gao Zhou's neck. Ah! The single tooth penetrated the golden light on Gao Zhou's body and slowly pierced into Gao Zhou's flesh and blood. Gao Zhou's eyes widened in pain. He never imagined that he, a zombie, would be bitten by another zombie, and it was still a man. Maida then inhaled hard, and Gao Zhou immediately felt a tingling sensation all over his body. He soon discovered that most of the corpse energy accumulated in his body was sucked away by Maida in an instant. After inhaling the corpse energy, most of Maida's injuries healed instantly. At this time, Maida raised his head, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, patted Gao Zhou's shoulder, and actually made a human voice. "I wanted to let you help me suck out the corpse poison." In fact, since Maida saw Gao Zhou, she had been wondering if Gao Zhou could help him suck out the corpse poison from his body. Without the corpse poison, he can be buried in the Mei family's ancestral grave safely. It can be regarded as not humiliating the ancestors, which is why Maida always stared at Gao Zhou during the trip to the underworld. But at this moment, it was too late. Su Tong and the eldest princess alone might not be able to fight the blood tide in front of them alone. He had to help. Ah, so that's it? Gao Zhou's chrysanthemum relaxed. After knowing the whole story, he felt much more relaxed. "Then you should have said it earlier, just to Brother Maida. You can't ignore this busy job." When Maida heard this, he suddenly smiled happily and said, "Next time, next time." After saying that, Maida turned around, waved in the direction of the bell tower not far away, and then jumped off the roof of the building. Before his body fell to the ground, he raised his hand and punched the wall in front of him. Countless broken stones flew up and hit the bloody water. Taking advantage of the gap where the blood and water could not completely decompose the bricks and stones, he saw Maida's figure was as light as a dragonfly, stepping on these stones and heading straight for the crack. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 896. Plop. The blood was colder than Su Tong thought. Vajraseal. The first time he rushed into the sea of blood, Su Tong held the Vajraseal in one hand. At the same time, the golden light flashed between his eyebrows, and the Vajraseal was activated by him. For a moment, Su Tong's body was covered with a layer of golden scales, and his whole body was wrapped in the dazzling Buddha's light. The Buddhist magical power seems to have some restraint on the blood. The golden Buddha light is like a red-hot stone thrown into the cold river water, making the surrounding blood boil, but it cannot corrode Su Tong's body. Countless negative emotions surged up like a tide, burrowing into Su Tong's flesh and letting out a desperate roar. As a blood wave like an abyss came over, Su Tong originally wanted to take out the angel feather given to him by the Holy See. Suddenly, his ankle sank, and when he looked down, he saw a skinny hand grasping his ankle. "It's the hand of the ancient god." I saw my palm pulling hard and quickly pulling him into the depths of the sea of blood. "Am I beautiful? Am I beautiful? You stole my wife. Hate it?" Familiar faces appeared in front of him in the depths of the sea of blood. Among them are not only those resentful demons that were swallowed up, but also figures that I am familiar with. "Go to hell, go to hell." The pharmacist rushed forward with a ferocious face, hugged Su Tong's thigh, and cursed with resentment. "Ha ha ha, it would be nice to have a land god buried with him." Mansai Musashi Gen's figure quietly appeared, grinning and laughing loudly. "Why don't you save me?" Guo Xiang lay on Su Tong's back and asked Su Tong over and over again. These faces are not entities, but ghosts that are a mixture of their grievances and spiritual will during their lifetimes. More and more resentful spirits are entangled, and the boiling resentment gradually drowns the Buddha's light. It's over, boy, we are all doomed now. Amota screamed in Sutong's mind. At this time, terrible pressure came, as if there was a big hand in the dark, pressing Sutong into the palm of his hand, and gradually closed it. Kaka kaka. For a moment, the Buddha's light began to twist and gradually deformed in this palm. If only for a moment, the Buddha's light would be crushed directly. When the time comes, even if Sutong is a land god, he will not be able to escape being gradually polluted by the blood and water, and he will not be able to escape death. Quick, hurry up. Can't you come back? Come back quickly. Seeing this, Amota suddenly remembered that Sutong could return to reality at this moment, and hurriedly called Sutong, asking him to return as soon as possible. However, Sutong stared at the shrine that was getting farther and farther above his head, and slowly raised his palm, but I haven't found the so-called truth yet. The truth, go away, as long as you go back, I can tell you whatever you want to know. Amrita was going crazy. He still wanted to seize the body and fight back to hell. He didn't want to be corroded and dissolved by the blood and water together with Sutong. In response to Amota's roar, Sutong shook his head. If you don't find the truth yourself, everything is meaningless. As he spoke, Sutong's eyes turned cold, and the Buddha's light suddenly dissipated from his body. Without the protection of the Buddha's light for a moment, countless black shadows swarmed towards Sutong like sharks that smelled blood. Looking at the approaching black shadow, Sutong suddenly grabbed his hand in the bloody water without any warning. The power of the formless, the tide of all things. Active Skill 1, All Things Day and Night. Each activation requires 40 script points. After activation, you can use the introduction to temporarily transform your own power. Each conversion time must not exceed 3 hours. In an instant, the boiling resentment calmed down in an instant, and countless strong resentments floated quietly around Sutong. When the silent eyelids in the darkness gradually opened, the originally surging blood flow quickly flowed backwards. A blood-red storm suddenly spread across Sutong's body, shaking the ancient god's hand away from his ankle. Then the original skin began to fall off, revealing dark red muscles, and a strong resentment seeped out from under his skin and wrapped around his flesh. Sutong's body was shaking, and he slowly stretched out the index fingers of both hands and put them in his mouth, and then pulled them out left and right. The skinless face was instantly pulled into an exaggerated smile, and a creepy, weird laugh erupted. The resentful spirits that originally surrounded Sutong finally realized that something was wrong and turned around to escape from him. However, Sutong suddenly grabbed the resentful spirit with one hand, opened his bloody mouth, sucked hard, and swallowed it directly into his mouth. Click, click, click. He ate slowly, as if savoring the taste carefully, and the past life of this resentful spirit was reflected in his black pupils. After chewing for a while, he spit it out and said to himself, "It doesn't taste good, it's too bitter." As he said that, he grabbed the other resentful spirits. Now the sea of blood stirred, and the resentful spirits that originally pounced on Sutong fled around like crazy as if they had been stimulated by something. However, Sutong's pupils flashed rapidly among these resentful spirits. Suddenly he stretched out his palm, and a black dragon binding talisman formed on his fingertips. In an instant, dozens of spider-like dragon binding talismans were woven on his fingertips. It formed a big net and sprinkled it on the fleeing resentful spirits in front. For a moment, many resentful spirits that had no time to escape dispersed in an instant, but only one resentful spirit, no matter how it dodges, this big net accurately covered the resentful spirit, and Sutong pulled hard. A familiar face appeared in front of him. It was Guoxiang, but it was not Guoxiang. Despite her pleading, Sutong kneaded it into a ball without changing his expression and stuffed it into his mouth. Accompanied by the grinding sound of teeth gnawing, people can't help but think of the sound of some kind of animal gnawing on a corpse. Memories of Guoxiang and Huaniang emerged one after another. He saw an inconspicuous door. The door was pushed open, and a locust tree was planted in the room. 3 rotting and stinking corpses hung from the locust tree. This is Guoxiang's memory. In her memory, she just touched the locust tree, and then her consciousness gradually became blurred. And what follows is completely Sephora Flower Girl's memory. Su Tong tasted the smell of the resentful spirit with an expressionless face, showing no interest in what happened next. He quickly flipped through the Huaniang's memories. These memories were not complete, and most of them were missing. Because this was not Huaniang herself, her shrine was not destroyed. While rummaging, Su Tong suddenly noticed a Kowloon temple. Although he only had a vague memory of it, Su Tong thought that the shrine of Huaniang might be hidden there. After finding the clues he was looking for, Su Tong raised his head and looked at the shrine above his head. He saw his body move, and huge resentment surged from his body. He was like a huge beast in the sea of blood, suddenly rushing towards the shrine. Feeling the threat from Su Tong, Mao Suifeng in the shrine emitted dazzling blood. A unique divine power filled the air from the shrine. Presumptuous. The sound of thunder struck, and the sea of blood rolled around, forming a huge bloody whirlpool, trying to suppress Su Tong. Under the divine power, Su Tong's limbs suddenly stiffened. But he was even more excited. He knew that this was true divine power, the majesty emanating from a god with a divine status. It is definitely not the power that an evil god like Chen Wangshen, who has been forgotten by the world, can have. Is this what I want to pursue the truth? The smile on Su Tong's face became more and more weird, and wisps of blood-red vermilion fire ignited from under his muscles. The power of disaster. Burning in the wilderness. Under his high-pitched roar, Su Tong's vermilion fire became more dazzling, like the karma fire in hell, causing the blood around him to evaporate and the surrounding blood sea to boil. De Wangfen. Resilience increases by 200% in a blazing environment. Immune to fire damage below level 7. Fire skills add 2, and cooldown reduction is 40%. Additional skills, Vulcan. Vulcan. It consumes 800 script points. After activation, it transforms into the god of Vulcan. All flame skills are temporarily upgraded by 3 levels and the cooling time is waived. He held the black water dragon fang in his hand and slashed forward with all his strength, fire hungry. Flames like karmic fire suddenly illuminated the water in front of them, mixed with countless twisted hatreds in the world, and suddenly burned and evaporated the whirlpool in front of them, turning it into a sea of fire. And Su Tong is more like a monster derived from the karmic fire, completely covered in the demonic and domineering fire, and he jumped out of the sea of fire. Let me see. Hai Shui Lanja cut the shrine open with a single blow and bit it down without any hesitation. Although Mao Suifeng dodged in time, he was still bitten on the arm by Su Tong. Suddenly, blurry pictures began to appear in Su Tong's mind. Xuefeng. Mao Suifeng, who was standing in the playground, turned around with a smile on his face. Professor Wang. Xuefeng, I received news that there will be a Chinese and Japanese antiques exchange meeting soon, so I would like to ask you to clean the warehouse. I am not comfortable leaving this matter to outsiders, so I want to invite you to come. The entire warehouse. Yes, you are the only one. Just clean it every day for about 2 months. These 7 oceans are your wages. The man in front of him took out 7 oceans and handed them to Mao Suifeng. Immediately after the scene changed, Mao Suifeng found a statue in the corner of the warehouse. The shape of the statue is very strange. It looks like a Taoist god, but it is impossible to tell which god it is. When Mao Suifeng stared at the statue in trance, he felt a faint light flash in the eyes of the statue in a daze, and then he fell asleep at the feet of the statue in a daze. In his sleep, Mao Suifeng felt something getting into his eyes. He stretched out his hand to rub his eyes and took a closer look. He found that it was already dark outside and hurriedly got up to prepare to go home. Strangely enough, when Mao Suifeng looked back at the statue, he found that he could actually call out the name of the statue. The great general of Blood River Gate Control, Ruturo. What surprised Su Tong was that Mao Suifeng still had a memory, which turned out to be part of the pharmacist's memory. It was the bottle of red blood he got from the team warehouse after he used the legendary flask to kill his entire team in the last script world. It was a bottle of the blood of an ancient evil god. The item book gives the entry for this bottle of blood water, which is clearly blood of Ruturo. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 897. Ruturo. This is an unfamiliar name, but as soon as you hear the name Blood River Gate Control God, you know that this guy is a god from the underworld. Was it because of him that Mao Suifeng could see the so-called door? And the blood of the ancient god in the medicine man's hand happened to be his blood. This was too much of a coincidence. Is it a coincidence? Spirits can see into the future. Su Tong couldn't help but think of these words in his mind, and a chill suddenly arose in his heart. A terrible thought came to his mind, which even made him dare not think about it deeply. Just when Su Tong wanted to see more memories, a dull cold snort shook Su Tong away. Mao Suifeng squinted at Su Tong. Isn't it good to leave now? What does this world have to do with you? You shouldn't be here. Su Tong looked at Mao Suifeng in front of him. Hearing this, Rutolo burst into laughter, as if he had heard a ridiculous joke. Don't you want the truth? Let me tell you. The so-called script was originally prepared for us, or in other words, it was for us. It gives you the strength to become players. Ruturo seemed to be deliberately delaying time, so he was happy to tell Su Tong the so-called truth. You know, the reason why gods are immortal is that behind them there is often a world, or even people from several worlds worshipping them. Just like this world now, when the cave world connects with reality, this world will become my world, and everyone will become my sacrifice. But even those gods who are more powerful than me cannot take the initiative to invade a world. And the world will not develop as we want. It always needs some people who are not from this world to go in the direction we envision. This is the so-called script. Oh, by the way, I've already paid the price for doing this, and that's the reward you get every time you leave. Rutolo said this and looked at Su Tong with a playful look. Dragon slayers will eventually become evil dragons. Have you forgotten that you can also occupy a world as your support place? What Ruturo said is true. As long as the level of certified players is high enough, they can occupy a scenario world and run it as their own base camp. In a sense, this is a kind of benefit given by the gods to players, or it can be understood as a kind of wooing. After all, when some players are strong enough, they will naturally become dissatisfied when they find out that they are just so-called tools. Therefore, giving a sweetener is enough to appease the dissatisfaction of most players. Rumble. At this time, there was a deafening vibration outside. Ruturo raised his head and looked towards the outside world. It has already begun. A large sea of blood undulated, and the cave sky had completely connected with reality. In an instant, bright red blood rain began to spread to the entire new territory. I believe that it won't be too long. As more and more people become his sacrifices, the whole world will turn into a blood-red ocean and become part of his sacrifices. It's not too late for you to leave now. The reward I gave you this time is very generous, enough to improve your strength a lot again. I'm looking forward to your performance when we meet next time. Ruturo looked at Su Tong, who was full of astonishment, and tried his best to show a kind smile, urging him to leave here as soon as possible. Su Tong raised his head blankly, and the face that he forcibly tore open became particularly weird for a moment. I originally thought that I was a player in the script, but I didn't expect that they were actually NPCs in the world of the script. They were not even as good as NPCs. At best, they were chess pieces and tools in the hands of the gods. Only when the truth is uncovered by oneself can one discover that the so-called truth is so different from what one originally imagined. This truth really subverted Su Tong's cognition. But when he calmed down and thought carefully, these clues had appeared in front of him a long time ago. For example, when she was in Hades last time, Lilith said that the war between the gods has never ended, and there is also competition between them. At the time, I didn't realize what war Lilith was talking about. It wasn't until this moment that I truly understood that what the gods were fighting for was the resources, population, and even the entire world in these script worlds. There are also masters, eldest princesses, old Taoists, etc. They are all living beings. The script world has never been a so-called script, but a real world of flesh and blood. Mr. Tai made minor changes to the script in order to deal with himself, but even so, he still stepped on the red line of the gods. It's like two people playing chess, but the referee secretly changed the pieces they placed. So the so-called above is obviously the gods of the heavens. No wonder when Mr. Tai was punished, the prompts mentioned NV Qingtian law many times, and the so-called NV Qingtian law is exactly the law practiced by the gods. There are also many detailed clues. At this moment, Su Tong recalled them one by one and felt creepy. For example, the Buddhist dispute in the last script world was not just a script, but a real war. It's just that at that time, I was just a chess piece. From the perspective of the chess piece, I didn't even understand that I was participating in a contest between gods. As the old saying goes, you are in a chess game and you don't know the game. After being frightened, Su Tong's eyes gradually returned to calm. He slowly raised his head, looked at Rotoro in front of him, opened his bloody mouth, and suddenly stretched out his dagger to stab Rotoro. Facing the black water dragon fang stabbed by Su Tong, Rotoro looked calm and did not dodge, allowing the dagger to pierce his body. But strangely, the wound pierced by the black water dragon fang was healed in an instant. I'm not part of your mission. There's no intersection between you and me. Besides, you can't kill me at all. Listen to my advice and leave. Su Tong's pupils were dancing with a faint light. You are right, this world has nothing to do with me, you are not in my mission, and you have to sacrifice the whole world has nothing to do with me, but unfortunately, I am not born to be rebellious. As he finished speaking, Rotoro suddenly felt his body tense up. He saw Su Tong pull hard with 10 fingers, and the dragon talismans were straightened one by one like spider threads. Unknowingly, they were woven into a big piece. The net was tightly wrapped around Rotoro's body. It turns out that the attack just now was just a feint, and Su Tong's real purpose was to quietly wrap the dragon talisman around his body. Walk! Su Tong shouted loudly, jumped up and grabbed Rotoro and rushed out. What are you going to do? Rotoro's expression changed drastically. He didn't know what Su Tong was going to do, but seeing his body getting closer and closer to the water, a bad feeling suddenly arose in his heart. Seeing that Su Tong was about to rush out of the water, Rotoro frowned. Su Tong's current state was completely immune to the erosion of the sea of blood, leaving him unable to do anything for a moment. Then his mind moved and he saw a dragon in the depths of the sea of blood. The skinny palm struck quickly. It was the hand of the ancient god that had just pulled Su Tong downwards. The skinny palm grew bigger and bigger in an instant, and in the next moment, it was a giant palm that covered the sky, quickly grabbing Su Tong. The ancient god's hand was extremely fast, with its 5 fingers spread out, like a prehistoric beast under the sea opening its bloody mouth, gradually covering the figures of Su Tong and Rotoro. However, at this moment, something suddenly appeared in Su Tong's hand, which was a white feather. Archangel feather, 1/1. Rumor has it that it is a feather left by an angel in the world, and it has extremely powerful powers. Active skill 1, Holy Light. Consume 3000 script points to activate LV12 Holy Light, purify evil creatures within a 20-meter diameter range, and provide powerful treatment to non-evil creatures. The moment Su Tong activated the holy light, he gently waved his hand and threw the feather above his head. Suddenly, a bright light suddenly appeared, and the sun-like light burst out in the dark sea of blood. Ah! This time, both Su Tong and Ruchulo were instantly exposed to the holy light. In an instant, Su Tong even felt that he was almost out of his mind. Plop! At the same time, the water surface exploded, and a hand suddenly pierced the cold sea of blood from the water surface, grabbed Su Tong's palm, and pulled Su Tong out of the water with great force. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 898. Wow! Su Tong's body was pulled out of the sea of blood, but his other hand was tightly holding the Shillong talisman. Looking back, it was Maida. This guy jumped down at some point. In order to pull Su Tong out, one of Maida's hands had been corroded to a bloody pulp. Su Tong didn't have time to thank him, so he grabbed the dragon talisman with both hands. Help! As he spoke, he pulled his hands back hard, and Roturo's head was pulled out into the sea of blood. He stared at Su Tong with resentment. Idiot, do you know who I am? I will throw you into the hell of the sea of blood, and you will never be reincarnated. Roturo's threat did not elicit a response from Su Tong, but he was kicked hard in the face by Su Tong's big foot. At this time, Maida blocked Su Tong's waist with both hands and pulled it back hard. Roturo's neck was slowly pulled out of the water. Roturo became anxious now, and frantically summoned the blood water around him, trying to crush the black water summoned by the eldest princess. This made the eldest princess, who was already feeling strenuous, bear the weight of a mountain. She saw that the black water she had summoned was about to collapse. The eldest princess first glanced at Roturo's neck. After discovering that Roturo's whole body was caught in the big net woven by the dragon binding talisman, she ignored the 37721 and looked at Maida and Su Tong. After taking a look at the person, his mind moved and he saw the old crooked neck tree behind him trembling slightly. The rope that was originally wrapped around it suddenly flew past the eldest princess, like a heavenly lock, speeding down the abyss. Maida's eyes widened in the next second, and she found a rope tied around her throat. Maida? Before Maida could complain, the rope was suddenly lifted, and the huge force suddenly caused Maida's head to fall back uncontrollably. Now Roturo's body began to be slowly pulled out of the blood like a carrot. You, are looking for death. I saw Su Tong's thick solace rubbing Roturo's face back and forth, and I could see that his big toes were almost inserted into Roturo's nostrils. But what Roturo was really angry about was that now that Su Tong knew the truth, he still dared to think bad things about himself. Roturo knew that if the stalemate continued, he might really be dragged into the blood river. Once he left the blood river, his vitality would be severely damaged. But Su Tong's current physique is not afraid of the erosion of blood at all, so Rotolo looked at Maida behind Su Tong. He saw a sudden movement in his heart. A blood arrow formed from blood penetrated the black water of the eldest princess, and then suddenly stabbed into Maida's back. Zitsiza. Even though he was a yaksha, the arrow made Maida's muscles suddenly tense up, and a hole as big as the mouth of a bowl was pierced behind him by blood, and Maida's chest could even be seen through the hole. The severe pain caused Mai's hand to loosen its grip, and Roturo took advantage of the opportunity to quickly pull his neck back into the blood. Seeing that this trick worked, Roturo immediately had a plan in mind. I can't do anything to you, so why can't I do anything to others? Su Tong's heart sank when he heard this, and then countless dense blood arrows were shot towards the side. Xianyuan shield. Seeing this, Su Tong quickly activated the Xianyuan shield, but not to himself, but to Maida behind him. The blood-red Xianyuan shield rose, completely blocking the arrows. But on the water on both sides above, a wave of waves suddenly rose and turned into a huge bloody hand, hitting the eldest princess. Ha ha ha, you are all going to die. A sly smile appeared on Rotoro's face. Just now he was concerned and confused, but now that he discovered Su Tong's shortcomings, his mind immediately became reactive. I can't kill you, but I can control the sea of blood to kill others. The black water summoned by that bitch is limited after all. Since it is all used to divide your own sea of blood, then it depends on what you use to stop my sea of blood. Even if the eldest princess can stop it, so what? Her sea of blood is endless, and reality has already connected with the cave. You can first kill the residents and use their blood and souls to strengthen your own strength. Rotoro stared at Su Tong with burning eyes. You want to be the savior, and you are worthy. In the end, you will only kill everyone. When Su Tong heard this, he turned back to look at the eldest princess, and saw a huge bloody hand suddenly falling down like covering the sky and the sun. The eldest princess could only summon a wall of water to barely resist. Boom! The bloody hand slapped on the water wall, and suddenly half of the water wall was scattered, and he saw the remaining bloody water rushing towards the eldest princess. Su Tong began to waver in his heart. The eldest princess seemed to have noticed something. She glanced sideways at Su Tong and said lightly, "Don't make my efforts feel worthless." The eldest princess's words were worth 1,000 words. Su Tong's eyes suddenly became sharp. He turned around and started to pull back with all his strength. Now Rotoro's body was slowly pulled out again, but his face was not panic at all. It is also a virtue to stop the loss in time. Look, she won't last long. After Rotolo finished speaking, the blood around him slowly boiled, converging into a big blood-red dragon. The dragon's tail rolled up, and huge waves rose up. Roar! The roar of the blood dragon was deafening, and it rushed towards the eldest princess with a huge wave. Head, don't let go, we are coming. At this moment, the shouts of Gao Zhou and the others came from the team channel. Su Tong was startled when he saw a crack in the void appearing next to the eldest princess. Following closely, Gao Zhou and the other three rushed out. It turns out that the Golden Saint Great Yuan liquid that has been blessed by drug-induced mania, although very powerful, will also greatly reduce the duration of the drug's effect. Originally, the hegemonic state blessed by Golden Saint Great Yuan liquid could last for 1 hour. But now it can only last about 20 minutes. It was during this time that the trio, who finally regained freedom of movement from their hegemonic state, rushed over immediately. They didn't know what Su Tong and the eldest princess were going to do, but since they were going to do it, as teammates, all they could do was to support them unconditionally. Leave this thing to me, you go down there and help. I saw Gao Zhou taking out the general's broken blade, and the bright red blood on the blade filled the air. Suddenly, a large amount of corpse energy poured into Gao Zhou's body from the broken blade, causing his body to quickly transform into a corpse, transforming into the form of a yaksha. He spread his wings and rushed towards the blood dragon in front of him. The mantis arms are like a chariot. Facing the figure swooping towards the blood dragon, Rotoro was filled with disdain. In his opinion, the only person who could pose a threat to him was Su Tong. As for the ants like Gao Zhou, he didn't care at all, but he didn't mind sending these guys on their way first. The blood dragon flew around and opened its mouth to devour Gao Zhou. The huge dragon's mouth opened, and countless resentful spirits emerged from the dragon's mouth, exuding desperate hatred. Want to eat me? Eat shit. Gao Zhou's pupils twitched, and he summoned more than 10 coffins in one breath and threw them into the blood dragon's mouth. Once the coffin was thrown into the blood dragon's mouth, it quickly decayed. However, the moment the coffin rotted open, a huge amount of corpse energy poured out of it. The massive corpse energy dyed the blood dragon black almost instantly. Jiesha. Gao Zhou formed a seal with his hands, and a large amount of corpse energy suddenly became evil, freezing the blood dragon instantly. Death. Immediately afterwards, Gao Zhou punched his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was mixed with some broken bones, which were Gao Zhou's immortal bones. Not turning the bones into leads, igniting dark blue fire, flying into the blood dragon's mouth, igniting the evil energy on the blood dragon's body. Boom! Suddenly the entire space began to twist under the blue flames, and the blood dragon was evaporated in an instant. But the blue flames did not end. Under the control of Gao Zhou, they gathered into a strange talisman. With Gao Zhou's finger, the talisman turned into a fluorescent light, and the traditional sea of blood was directed at Rodolfo's body. At the same time, Gu Zibai and Chang Liuzhu had also arrived beside Su Tong. I saw two people grabbing Su Tong's wrist with their left and right hands. Their martial arts will penetrated the whole body. With a strong tug, they actually pulled most of Rotoro's body out of the sea of blood. At this time, the hand of the ancient god, which was already incomplete, suddenly stood beside Rotoro, holding the curse of evil launched by Gao Zhou in the palm of his hand. The curse broke out, causing the ancient god's hand to instantly fall apart. Without the restraint of the ancient god's hand, Rotoro's body began to be unable to hold on, but he smiled instead. Because the black water controlled by the eldest princess has begun to collapse. She can't hold it anymore. Rotoro raised his head, his face full of pride. He only needed to hold on for a moment, and the victory would be his. Su Tong and the others might be able to escape, but this woman is destined to have no way to escape. How to do? In the small window of the bell tower in the distance, two pairs of eyes were watching the situation under the crack. When he saw that the black water summoned by the eldest princess began to slowly collapse, Li Bo's heart dropped to the bottom of the valley. His intuition told him that leaving this world right now was the most important thing, but there was always a feeling in his heart, as if there was a vague force urging him to do something. But what can I do? Li Bo had a bitter smile on his face, fearing that just a little bit of blood would be enough to make him irrecoverable. Just when Li Bo didn't know what to do, the girl on the side suddenly raised her head in confusion. After a while, the girl turned back to look at Li Bo. "Uncle, listen, there is a bell over there." "Bells?" Li Bo turned his head in confusion and raised his ears to listen. Sure enough, a bell rang faintly in the distance. The sound is very weak, and you can't even hear it clearly if you don't listen carefully. "Oh, is this the so-called death knell?" A wry smile appeared on Li Bo's face, feeling that his good luck seemed to have come to an end. But the girl said in surprise, "I know, this is the church bell. My mother likes to take me to church for worship, and said that when I grow up, she will send me to be a nun." Li Bo just nodded when he heard this and was not surprised. As a policeman, he had also seen missionaries preaching to refugees. It seemed that in reality, the vast majority of residents in the new territories believed in the church. After listening to the bells for a while, the girl was in trance. She put her hands on her chest and silently sang hymns. When Li Bo saw this, he just sighed and thought to himself, singing this thing is useful now. If it really works, in the future, damn it, it's a miracle. Along with the hymn chanted by the girl, a faint ray of holy light appeared on the girl's body and became stronger and stronger. The melodious singing echoed in his ears again, causing Li Bo to reach out and grab the rope behind him. Boom! Thick dust rose, and the pure white holy light on the girl's body rippled around along with the sound of the bell. Seeing this scene, Li Bo was also surprised. However, after being stunned for a moment, Li Bo suddenly realized something, turned around and began to shake the bell rope desperately after standing up. Dong 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 dong. The bells and songs became louder and louder in this desperate cave. In reality, the bishop and everyone who were kneeling to pray before the Lord seemed to be feeling something. They raised their heads and looked in the direction of Kowloon walled city. They immediately ran out of the church and looked in the direction of Kowloon walled city with shocked expressions. "That's a miracle." Bishop Simpson knelt on the ground with a thud, holding the cross in his hands high, his eyes filled with tears, and he screamed with excitement. "A miracle has not happened for 100 years. Even the Pope can only see the records of those miracles from the archives. But today, he actually witnessed the miracle coming. This honor was a confirmation of his faith." "What is that?" In the cave sky, everyone was also surprised by the singing. Everyone raised their heads and saw one after another milky white holy light. Under the ripples of the bell, it seemed that they were trying to tear the cave sky apart. How could this happen? Rodolfo's expression suddenly changed. He found that the boiling sea of blood began to gradually quiet down and even slowly shrink. "What's going on? Could it be that, damn, you Western reptiles dare to ruin my good deeds?" Rotoro suddenly realized that there must be a Western god who was secretly obstructing him. He immediately roared angrily and waved his arms, causing the sea of blood to churn, forming a doomsday scene like a landslide and tsunami, and smashed towards the bell tower. Not good. Seeing this scene, Gao Zhou hurriedly wanted to rush to the bell tower, but after losing the immortal bone, his strength was greatly reduced and he could no longer keep up with the speed of the blood tide. I could only shout to Li Bo in the team channel, "Hurry up, it's too late." Dong dong dong. However, Li Bo seemed not to hear it and shook the bell rope in his hands desperately. He looked at the rippling copper bell, and in a daze, he seemed to see a gorgeous door to heaven slowly opening towards him. A holy figure behind the door was walking in his direction guided by the sound of the bell. "Come." Boom. At the same time, the blood wave crashed down, completely engulfing the entire bell tower. The sound of the bell stopped abruptly. Grass. Seeing this, Gao Zhou couldn't help but cursed. But at this moment, a white holy light rose from the blood tide and actually tore it apart. Time was frozen at this moment, and except for the fellow god Rotoro, everything was frozen there, including the churning sea of blood, Gao Zhou, and others. Gao Zhou's eyes widened as he watched the holy figure in the holy light walking towards him, and his heartbeat suddenly accelerated. What a nice view. Seeing the figure getting closer and closer, Gao Zhou felt that his breathing was about to stop, but the figure did not stop in front of him, but flew straight down into the abyss. The holy feathers fell like snowflakes. When the feathers touched the surrounding blood sea, they turned into white holy light, purifying the blood sea. The figures of the resentful spirits in the blood sea immediately showed relief. His expression lightly disappeared into the holy light. The figure flew down and appeared directly behind Su Tong. His pink lotus-like arms spread out and hugged Su Tong. "I'm back." The familiar voice made Su Tong perk up, and the corners of his lips trembled slightly as he called out her name, "Qiao Qian. You are not following the rules." Rotoro roared angrily, but after all, he was not his true self. Under the suppression of the other party's godhead, he could only vent his inner anger with curses. "I'm sorry. As a messenger of the church, I regret to inform you that the new territories are still under the protection of our church, and we have the right to respond to the call of believers." Her long blonde hair danced lightly, revealing her delicate face and a pair of green pupils, and she spoke solemnly. Then she stretched out her slender and tender hands, gently held Su Tong's hand, and then gently pulled it. Rotoro could only watch helplessly as his body was being pulled out of the sea of blood bit by bit. At this time, Su Tong felt as if something was stuffed into his hand, and the figure behind him gradually disappeared in the holy light. Shua. For a moment, the holy light burst out, and everyone closed their eyes involuntarily. When everyone opened their eyes again, the sea of blood in front of them had disappeared, and Su Tong I and others were standing in the empty Kowloon walled city. The sky had cleared, as if everything that had happened before was just a dream. Dong 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 dong. On the contrary, the sound of the bell tower on the wall was so real that everyone finally came back to their senses. Su Tong opened his palm and saw a familiar thing Pope badge in the palm of his other hand. It's really you. Su Tong took a deep breath and put this thing away. He quickly looked around and saw Ruturo prostrate on the ground, trembling all over. After losing the cave sky and the sea of blood, he had almost no fighting ability. But Ruturo was still smiling, tilting his head to look at Su Tong. I lost, but what can you do to me? You ruined my good deeds this time, just wait for my revenge tenfold and 100-fold. The draftsman is still so arrogant, I'll kill him with my head. After Gao Zhou fell to the ground, he returned to his normal appearance, but his face was horribly pale. Seeing that Ruturo was still so arrogant, he became furious and rushed forward to kick the guy a few times. Su Tong lifted Ruturo from the ground with a cold face, and held the black water Ryaga in his other hand. Wait, it can't die yet. This guy is an opportunity. Let's hand him over to Master. At this time, the eldest princess patted Su Tong on the shoulder and whispered in Su Tong's ear. Luchuoluo became even more arrogant when he saw this. Oh, you are Du Xiren's person, ha 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 ha, do you really think that a mere trivial official can control me? This is just a thought of mine, even if you don't, so what if he kills me or hands me over to Du Xiren? What can he do to me? Behind me is the Blood River cult master. Boom. When Ruturo called out the 4 words Lord of the Blood River cult, a thunderbolt suddenly sounded in the clear sky. That was an ancient god deep in the underworld, and even Du Xiren had to avoid its edge. Ruturo grinned with a crazy grin and glanced at everyone present. His black pupils seemed to be able to penetrate their bodies and look directly into everyone's soul. He kept their appearance firmly in his heart and just waited. One day in the future, I will repay today's humiliation twice as much. However, in the face of provocation, Su Tong's expression was surprisingly calm, and he looked at Ruturo quietly. He raised his arm, and activated it between reality and reality. The door slowly opened, and the master and others were already at the door, waiting for him later. I have the leader of the church to support me. Even if I make a huge mistake, no one can do anything to me. How can you, brat, fight with me? After Rutolo saw Shuigui and others, he became even more arrogant and spoke provocatively. Su Tong frowned, and when he was about to speak, the master's wife standing next to Shuigui suddenly said, "Good disciple, this man is the master of the Blood Sea Gate control. We don't need to ask for everything, we only need one piece of evidence, one idea enough." Hearing this, Su Tong raised his brows slightly, understood what the master's wife meant, and pulled Ruturo in front of him, staring at Ruturo. "You ask me why, I tell you, revolution." The moment the words fell, the black water dragon fang in his hand suddenly raised in front of Ruturo. In an instant, Ruturo felt bad, and his head was already spinning. Before it fell to the ground, the master's wife, who was standing next to Master Shuigui, suddenly stretched out her hand, grabbed Ruturo's head, and directly suppressed and sealed it. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Xiao. Chapter 901. After the master's wife sealed Rutolo, the master said to Su Tong, "Let's go back first. Come to us after you have finished taking care of the rest." Su Tong nodded, helped up Maida beside him, and sent him between reality and reality. As for the eldest princess, she had no intention of going back. Su Tong then threw the other half of Ruturo's body directly into the Great Sun Ruyi furnace, planning to wait until he got back and find some free time to refine this guy into a pill. After sending Master away, Su Tong and others helped him out of Kowloon walled city one after another. When they walked out of the walled city, everyone was in a state of embarrassment. Except for Li Bo, everyone else was more or less injured, and Su Tong was no exception. He was the most seriously injured, with not an inch of skin and flesh on his body intact. But Su Tong had no intention of going back just yet. The main mission is not over yet, there is still one shrine left, but I already know roughly where the shrine is. In order to avoid long nights and dreams, Su Tong and others went straight to Julong Mountain behind the Kowloon walled city after they came out. The so-called Julong Temple is actually not easy to find. Su Tong and the others also met a woodcutter. Under the guidance of the woodcutter, they found the so-called Julong Temple on the top of Chenchan Mountain in Julong Mountain. It was a small temple that looked similar to the Earth Temple. There are overgrown weeds all around. If a passerby passes by, it is easy to miss it if you are not paying attention. When Su Tong and others came to the temple, they looked inside and saw a shrine in the temple. The gods in the shrine were wrapped in red cloth. Buzzing. The shrine trembled slightly, and the red cloth on it fell off, revealing a clay statue, and then it actually tried to fly out of the shrine and escape. It's just that Huaniang's vitality has been severely damaged in Kowloon walled city. Even if it was not her true self that was destroyed, how much power can a god who has been forgotten by the world have? He barely managed to fly up, and before he could even get out of 10 feet, Gu Zibai jumped up in the air and stepped heavily on the ground. Still want to run? Gu Zibai said that he was about to crush Huaniang, etc. At this time, Su Tong reached out to stop Gu Zibai and picked up the statue of Huaniang. Tell me where the other dragon beads are. As long as you give me the other dragon beads, I will not destroy you and will give them to you as special treat. Su Tong said, and took out a ball of incense merit. For Huaniang, it is not an exaggeration to say that the incense merit is a luxury product. This thing can protect its true spirit. I can have someone help you reshape your golden body and give you a place under the Dragon King Temple. People in the new territory believe in gods very much, and they will also believe in gods in the future, so you don't have to worry about incense, at least in the end of the Dharma era. You can enjoy a piece of incense and it will not disappear in smoke. After hearing Su Tong's words, the statue of Huaniang trembled slightly. Then there was a sound of gravel cracking under the temple. Gao Zhou walked over and took a look. A box was exposed from the stone platform under the shrine. After opening it, he saw 4 dragon balls inside. Although not all, it is enough for the eldest princess. Seeing that he had received the item, Su Tong nodded with satisfaction and looked at the statue in his hand. I'm offended, please feel sorry for me first. With that said, Su Tong called out the ghost bell and activated the soul binding skill. Suddenly, a ray of grey light was lifted into the palm of his hand. After throwing all the incense merits and this light into the soul coffin, the statue lost the power of the god and suddenly turned into powder. Su Tong and the others also received a prompt for the main mission. Ding. Main mission 3, Shrine, completed. Ding. You have completed the main mission. You can return to reality at any time, or you can stay here for 15 days. After receiving the reminder of the mission, Su Tong and others immediately relaxed a lot. He handed the dragon beads to the eldest princess. Although the dragon beads were incomplete and there were only 5 of them including the original one in his hand, these were enough for the eldest princess. The main mission has been completed, and the alliance mission has also been completed. But Su Tong and others were not in a hurry to leave, but returned to the Yuxing gang for training. On the one hand, Su Tong planned to give the eldest princess a ride, and on the other hand, if he stayed for a few more days, the master would gain more merit. There was nothing wrong with accumulating more of these things. After 2 days of recuperation, everyone gradually regained their strength. Among them, Gao Zhou was injured the most. The guy finally managed to condense his bones into pieces, and the second was the eldest princess. Her vitality was injured, but with the dragon balls around, she recovered quickly. Speaking of which, the most surprising thing is Li Bo. This guy's luck is really enviable. Not only did he save his life, but he also received a mark of heaven. Mark of heaven. As a devout believer in the church, the mark of recognition you get when you call out the gate of heaven. Passive skill 1, pious person. Those who hold this mark gain a status equivalent to that of the prime minister and deacon in all spheres of influence of the church. Passive skill 2, believer. Those who hold the mark will have their strength increased by 30%. When near the church, their strength will be temporarily increased by 120%. Active skill 1, proof of seeking Tao. Spend 800 script points, issue the seeker's certificate, and receive the blessing of an archangel at random. Duration, 30 minutes. Cooling time, 24 hours. This mark can be called Pinzixi's version of the sacred physique, and it does not occupy the grid of the prop book. It can be regarded as a rare and top-quality prop card. As for when Li Bo became a believer in the church, only the devil knows, and this kind of thing is not important at all. After all, even Josie, who can turn a demon into an angel, can appear, so what else is impossible? Su Tong also told everyone the so-called truth in Ruchulo's mouth. After hearing this result, Gao Zhou and others fell silent. This is like playing a game, and after investing a lot of money and time in it, you suddenly find that the game company not only arranged for insiders to let you recharge, but also shamelessly removed all the equipment updated in the next version. It was only at the end of the game that I realized that you were just the leaks harvested by others, and no one would feel comfortable in that mood. The difference is that in reality players can also delete their accounts and stop playing. But they couldn't delete the account. Only being repeatedly treated as a chess piece and a tool at the mercy of the gods, one becomes like the opponent's puppet. If they have not become certified players, even if they know the truth, they will not feel unwilling. After all, the gap in strength is there. But now, it's a completely different mood. Boss, can we resist? Gao Zhou raised his head. He used to feel adventurous when he entered the world of scripts. Now that he learned the truth, he even began to feel a great rejection of the world of scripts. Su Tong said nothing, but looked at the eldest princess beside him. Since she was the one who led her to reveal the truth, perhaps the eldest princess and master had some ideas. However, the eldest princess remained silent and did not speak out on this matter. Seeing this, Su Tong knew that he would probably have to go to his master to see what his plans were. In the following days, under Su Tong's instruction, things about the Kowloon walled city gradually began to calm down. Whether it was official or private, in order to quell those rumors, Su Tong also specially asked people to build a Dragon King temple in the walled city. Interestingly, under the Dragon King statue, there are two children's statues. The one on the left is called the Good Girl. She is fair and very cute. She holds a cross in her chest with her hands clasped in her fists, as if she is reciting a hymn. This can be regarded as building a relationship with the church on a certain level. After all, the power of the church will still be very stubborn in the new territories for some time to come. With the endorsement of the church, not only will the Dragon King temple not be excluded, but it will be better off, and in this way, if you do, even people who believe in the church can still worship the Dragon King with peace of mind. The evil girl on the right is holding a locust tree vine in her hand. She is so ferocious that it makes people feel nervous just to see her. These two statues are statues that Su Tong fulfilled his promise and erected for Huaniang. The other one is the soul of the little girl, which Su Tong enshrined into one as a thank you for helping him. Su Tong also gave the two people a name in a very naughty way, which is to reward the good and punish the evil. You don't have to make up the story yourself. Folks can figure it out on their own when they hear the name. With the Dragon King temple in place, the Kowloon walled city gradually began to regain stability. The eldest princess's injuries have almost recovered in the past few days. Although the two have not communicated, they already know that they are about to part ways. Before leaving, the eldest princess planned to say goodbye to her master and others. Su Tong naturally wanted to go in and ask the master about Ruchulo's treatment. I saw Su Tong letting go of reality, and then entering the gate with the eldest princess. At this moment, on the other side of the sea, a passenger ship was sailing against the wind. On the deck of the passenger ship, a musician played a violin and played a melodious and moving music, which made the faces of everyone on the deck reflect the thoughts of returning home. Oops! An oriental face held a wine glass in one hand and walked to the deck. Facing the soothing sunshine in front of him, he felt indescribably comfortable. If Su Tong were here, he would definitely recognize that this person was none other than Akimaru's true form. He did not return to reality. Instead, he took the passenger ship to the other side of the ocean with a leisurely expression, enjoying the comfort of life. Things like fighting life and death don't seem to have anything to do with him. Enjoying time is his favorite thing. Just with his relaxed demeanor, Akimaru always felt a little uncomfortable. He couldn't tell where he felt uncomfortable, but he always felt something unexplainable in his heart. Look, over there. At this time, someone on the deck suddenly shouted and pointed forward. Everyone walked up to take a look and found a ship approaching quickly. The ship is completely different from an ordinary passenger ship. The wooden hull moves very fast, as if there is an invisible big hand pushing the ship forward quickly on the water. In an instant, it gradually gets closer to the passenger ship. There was an eye-catching church cross emblem on the long sail, which made many people change their expressions. Some devout believers had already started to lower their heads and pray. Church. Akimaru felt more and more uncomfortable when he saw the ship. Just as he was hesitating whether to go back to the cabin, his heart suddenly tightened, and a look that made him feel uneasy stared at him. Looking back, it was a priest covered in black robes, with a pair of pale golden pupils that seemed to see through him at a glance. Infidel! Damn it! The priest whispered with his lips, almost no sound came out, but for Akimaru, it was no less than a bolt from the blue. His body stiffened suddenly, and a huge sense of oppression came over, tightly wrapping his heart, and then it started squeezing little by little, almost suffocating him. Bang bang bang, click. At the moment when his heart burst, Akimaru's pupils tightened, a wisp of blood spurted out from his mouth, and he screamed, "Return!" After saying that, his body fell off the deck with a plop, and fell into the sea water. But when the priest looked over again, he didn't find Akimaru's body. "Sir Dale, what happened?" A group of missionaries heard the movement and quickly came forward. They faced Archbishop Dale in front of them and asked respectfully. Dale waved his hand, "A heretic has been eliminated. How long will it take for us to reach the new territory?" "It's almost up to 2 hours. Then go faster. If you miss it this time, you may not meet it next time," Dale said, raising his palms. The golden cross in his hands shone with brilliant divine light, and said softly, "God said, let there be wind." As the words came out, the sails suddenly started to flutter, and everyone clearly felt that the speed of the entire ship suddenly accelerated by several knots. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 902. Master. Su Tong came back with the eldest princess. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the master and his wife sitting in the pavilion drinking tea. After seeing Su Tong, he waved to the two of them with a smile. After Su and Tong walked up and sat down, Su Tong glanced at the master's room. "Don't look at it. Your master is taking the old Taoist priest to find Du Ziren." Mr. Song saw what Su Tong was thinking and said before he could speak. Rodologo's backstage is huge, but Hades has already made it clear that after the Yuan dynasty, the gods are not allowed to separate their kingdoms, and after the Ming dynasty, the gods are not allowed to cause chaos. The Hades will give you an explanation for this matter, but just based on your master, this situation, if we can't sue, it would be more appropriate for Du Ziren to come forward. Su Tong frowned when he heard this, picked up the tea and took a sip. Upon seeing this, Mr. Song knew that he had a lot of questions to ask, so he simply waited slowly until Su Tong figured it out. After about a cup of tea, Su Tong spoke, but when he opened his mouth, he was not asking what Hades could give him this time, but asking about another matter. Master, you guys have known about Rutoro for a long time. I knew a little bit, but I didn't expect it would be so deeply involved. After the goddess came back, she told us a lot of things. Otherwise, who would have thought that the master of the Blood Sea Gate control was secretly operating? Goddess. Su Tong was secretly surprised that he had underestimated this girl after all. She was eating, drinking, and having fun along the way, and it seemed as easy as going on vacation, but this little girl was always there in key places. Especially those 7 copper coins, which may seem insignificant, but are of great benefit to you. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but look at his wife. Master's wife, what is the origin of this girl? Is she really a fairy? Haha, idiot, if she really is a god, why doesn't she just come down here to experience the suffering of the people instead of being a god? The master's wife was amused by Su Tong's words. After speaking, she held her chin with one hand, as if she was lost in thought, and then said for a moment, I suspect that she is a soul child who was reincarnated by some god. Reincarnation. Su Tong opened his eyes wide. He knew that this girl's origin was extraordinary, but he didn't expect it to be so weird. You must know that reincarnation is much more difficult than seizing a body. When ordinary people practice Taoism, except for a few who have the opportunity and the foundation, the vast majority of people stop at the level of entering the Tao. Even if it is to enter the Tao, become enlightened, or even become an immortal. After the death of these people, whether their souls fell into the underworld or ascended to the immortal world, their cultivation level stopped. Either join the underworld and become a ghost cultivator, or practice the divine way. Only those with great courage dare to give up all their own practice and reincarnate. Just reincarnation is not an easy thing. The 6 paths of reincarnation are not something you can choose casually. What's more, most gods would not want to take risks in this stage of being lost in the womb. Unless there is someone who can solve this mystery in the womb at a special time, it is also known as enlightenment and immortality, which is what it means. This difficulty is not ordinary. If it is true, who inspired this girl and which god she was in her previous life? Even the master's wife doesn't know these issues. Let's get back to the topic. Let's not talk about the Tianu thing for now. After all, if she doesn't tell, who will know her identity? Master, what opportunities can Rutoro bring to me? The eldest princess even risked her life this time, and her vitality was severely injured. If it weren't for the Dragon Ball to help her recover her vitality, I don't know when she would be able to recover from her injuries. Not to mention, everyone else risked half their lives this time, which shows how important Rutoro is. Well, your master told me about this before he left, so you can just rest assured. I just have one thing to ask you. What will happen to you if you jump out of this chessboard? Jump off the board. This question really caught Su Tong off guard. After thinking for a moment, Su Tong raised his brows slightly. I am destined to be born, and the princes and generals will be happy with each other. Those who have the seed will call. After all, no one is willing to be manipulated. If there is a chance to jump out of the chessboard, Su Tong also wants to compete with the gods on the chessboard. Mr. Song was very satisfied with this answer, and the mistress beside him also smiled. I'm afraid Taoist Mai Hua thought the same way at the beginning. Plum Blossom Taoist. Su Tong didn't expect that this kind of thing could be related to him. I just heard the master say with a smile, Taoist Mai Hua was just like you at the beginning, but he made a big fuss in the underworld and retreated. Do you think that was just that? In fact, although Taoist Mai Hua lost his luck and stopped practicing, he gained this as an opportunity to jump out of the chessboard. Otherwise why would the souls of the descendants of the Mei family not fall into the netherworld? Think about it, if they did not fall into the netherworld, where would the souls of the descendants of the May family have gone for so many years? Hearing what his master said, Su Tong suddenly thought of the painting in the May family's ancestral hall. It is said that one flower and one world, maybe there is another world in that painting. And whether Taoist Mai Hua himself is really dead is still unknown. The so-called jumping out of the three realms and not being in the five elements has been accomplished by Taoist Mai Hua. Besides, although the May family is the root of heretics in the world, most of the methods taught are yinmen and trickery. When Mr. Song said this, his face turned red and he looked sideways at the May garden behind him. Mr. May was still there, not to mention that the 7 sects of his family were inherited from the May family. After all, it was a bit unkind to criticize his ancestor like this. Fortunately, Mr. May seems to be healing Maiden now and doesn't care about this. Otherwise, if he hears it, he might glare at him. But that's what it means. Since Mai Hua Taoist has inherited the method of Yanchu, why doesn't he focus on developing more profound Yanchu, but instead spreads these strange schools? It's hard to say whether there is a layout of Mai Hua Taoist. Mr. Song's words really opened Su Tong's eyes. Su Tong had asked all the questions, and all Mr. Song had said. The eldest princess stood up slowly, raised the teacup in her hand, and faced Mr. Song and his wife. I have decided to leave. Since the old man is not here, let's have tea instead of wine to say goodbye. Hey, it's hard for you to protect this brat for so long. I would like to thank you on behalf of my master. Mr. Song calmly raised the teacup in his hand. When Master Shuigui left the eldest princess and Lao Dao behind, he wanted them to escort Su Tong. Although he intended to use them, he did not really treat them as slaves. Instead, they complemented each other. It may be said that it started with violence, but they got to know each other with sincerity, and today they are separated, which is also expected. Everyone says that the world is a long way from the rivers and lakes. I'm afraid your journey will be even bigger than the rivers and lakes. We are destined to see each other again this time. But, from now on, I will have one less person to talk to. The mistress held up the teacup with a smile, knowing that with the eldest princess gone, she might have to wait for who knows how long before we meet again. For a moment, Su Tong was left at the table. Facing the gazes of the three people, Su Tong could only raise the teacup. He was still reluctant to part with it, but he knew more clearly that the eldest princess was not the kind of person who was greedy for comfort. Their ambitions were no less than those of others, but their coyness made others look pretentious, so they simply said openly, "Next time we meet, let's drink together. If you can't beat me then, just keep going. Come back and be my maid. Humph. I hope you can run faster by then. Otherwise, if you fall into my hands, I will suck you dry even if I don't peel off your third layer of skin." The two of them were talking tit for tat, but they had sincere smiles on their faces. After drinking a cup of tea, the mistress took the eldest princess's hand and planned to send her out in person. "It's a pity, I was still thinking of keeping her to be your wife." The master shook his head and sighed as he followed Su Tong. Su Tong rolled his eyes when he heard this and thought to himself, "Are you as old as you? You play forbidden magic, you summoned a daughter-in-law, and you still don't let her come around." Of course, he didn't dare to say this, otherwise his master would let him go, and neither would his master's wife. "Be careful when you go there. There are some things I can't say. It's all here. You can refer to it for reference in the future." As the mistress walked, she whispered a message and quietly put a wooden box into the eldest princess's sleeve. The eldest princess raised her brows slightly and nodded slightly to her mistress. It wasn't until the two of them left the space between reality and reality that Song and Lao gradually disappeared behind the gate. The eldest princess wanted to leave, so she didn't intend to alarm the others. The two of them ran straight towards Julong Mountain and reached the top of the mountain. Looking at the bayport in front of them, The eldest princess glanced at Su Tong, hesitated for a moment, and finally did not speak. Just said, "Take care." "The same to you." Su Tong nodded, and saw the eldest princess taking a deep breath, suddenly jumping up, and her figure soaring into the sky. Rumble. At this time, the originally clear sky turned into dark clouds in an instant, as if there was a force in the dark preventing the eldest princess from crossing the border. Su Tong's fist tightened, but he relaxed quickly. On the way here, the eldest princess had already said that in fact, the door was not in reality, nor in the cave, but in the heart. Only by having enough thoughts to attack the shackles of the world can we explore the existence of the world. The so-called door is not everywhere, but at a specific time point, there is an inconspicuous hole. It is not difficult to find this hole. The difficulty lies in whether you have strong enough thoughts to pass through this door. Therefore, when thunder and lightning appear, no outsiders can intervene. This thing is just like magic. It's mysterious when it's not revealed, but it's not a big deal once it's revealed. The thunder and lightning quickly drowned the figure of the eldest princess. Even if Su Tong looked with his spiritual eyes, he could only see a blurry outline struggling to move forward in the thunder. At this time, there was a roar of dragon in the thunder light, and I saw rolling dragon energy surging from the eldest princess. She twisted her body wantonly in the thunder light. Countless thunder and lightning flashed, causing the people in the new territory to kneel down and worship, shouting "Dragon King!" Apparitions. Gradually, as the dragon shadow gradually poured into the depths of the clouds, Su Tong could no longer see the figure of the eldest princess. After waiting for a while, the dark clouds dispersed and the sky became clear. Su Tong also let out a long breath. He knew that the eldest princess had succeeded. If she failed, she would definitely turn back. At this time, Su Tong suddenly frowned and looked sideways at the sea in the distance. A huge sense of oppression is approaching here quickly. Looking around, I saw a sailboat approaching at a speed that was difficult for ordinary people to understand. It seemed that it was not a wooden sailboat, but more like a real warship. A middle-aged man stood on the deck. The black priest's robe matched with his long golden hair, thick beard, and a pair of aggressive eyes. It made people feel that he didn't look like a priest, but more like a priest. Like a domineering lion king. The other party just looked at him, and the oppressive feeling made him feel uncomfortable all over. He was an earth immortal, but the other party seemed to be stronger than himself. This inevitably made Su Tong feel a turmoil in his heart. He is worthy of being the third largest person in the world. One of the great religions is already in the Dharma ending age, but there can still be such a master sitting in charge. The visitor was coming in his own direction. Su Tong thought for a moment, and considering that he would be related to the church in the future, he simply waited here to see what the other party was going to do. By the way, give this thing a try and see if it works. Su Tong opened his palm, and the Pope badge that Jiao Qian had thrust into his hand appeared in his palm. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 903. The Holy See sailboat came very quickly, and when people at the port saw it, the ship had already sailed into the port. Facing such a gorgeous sailing ship, many fishermen of the older generation could not help but raise their heads and show strange expressions. Such huge sailing ships were rare when they were young, and even less so when they grew up. Before the sailboat docked, the local police station and the army had already rushed over. Among them, the first ones were naturally the local Bishop Simpson and the officer Simon. The two of them looked very nervous, especially Simon, who had sweat on his forehead. Archbishop Dale was a name he had admired for a long time. One of the 12 cardinal archbishops, it is said that the Pope has offered him several times to take over as the next Pope, but he has always rejected it. Of course, what Archbishop Dale is most famous for is not these rumors, but his hardline approach and almost paranoid character. He even tried a nobleman on the spot at a nobleman's banquet because the nobleman put his hand on the thigh of a maid while praying. This incident caused a great sensation at the time, but no one dared to come forward to accuse. Even the royal family was extremely afraid of the Archbishop. Now that the Archbishop is here in person, Simon is really under a lot of pressure. Bang! At this time, the deck was lowered and the priests in black robes walked off the ship. The people in the port had seen many of these foreign adults, so they didn't think it was anything strange. It's just that I have never seen such a big battle before, as if some big shot is coming. Simon and Simpson raised their heads. When they saw Dale, who was also wearing a black priest's robe, they felt a huge sense of oppression even though they had been mentally prepared. Even if the other party didn't do this deliberately, this sense of oppression still makes it difficult to breathe. Please allow me, on behalf of the believers in the new territories, to welcome you. Simpson stepped forward, put his hands on his chest, and bowed to Dale in front of him. Dale stretched out his palm and gently placed it on Simpson's head to express his blessing. A rare smile appeared on his face. Congratulations to Bishop Simpson. Your faith has been confirmed. The church has drawn up a plan for your promotion to the patriarch based on your situation announcement. I believe there will be news soon. Upon hearing the news, Simpson suddenly became excited. For him to be promoted to the position of patriarch at his age is a huge promotion. Thank you for the good news. Simpson thanked him repeatedly, but soon he looked embarrassed about the Holy Son. In fact, he had already sent people to look for him, but no trace of Su Tong could be found. He was afraid that this would make Archbishop Dale displeased. While he was thinking about how to explain, Dale looked at Julong Mountain behind the port. The Holy Son is already waiting for me. Ah! Simpson was stunned for a second, and then he immediately made the sign of the cross on his chest with understanding and chanted, "The omniscient and omnipotent God is everywhere." Before they could say anything else, Dale led the black-robed priests beside him towards Julong Mountain. With Dale's strength, Julong Mountain was just a stone's throw away, but it took him a full hour to walk this way. A group of black-robed priests marched forward in a procession. Wherever they went, they continued to distribute gospel pamphlets, as well as some silver dollar coupons and other supplies to the surrounding residents. There were reporters taking photos along the way. I saw Dale summoning the divine light to heal an old man's broken thigh, which made the old man excitedly call him a god. However, Dale told everyone righteously, this is the gospel of the Lord God, not his power. They just a slave of the Lord God. When the ceremony was over, he did not forget to personally pick up the old man and sprinkle holy water on everyone. Just by doing this, I don't know how many people will start converting to the church. TCH, anyone who has watched the Three Kingdoms will understand this. Seeing this while sitting on the top of the mountain, Su Tong couldn't help but complain. He had used it countless times, from opening altars to treating diseases, to using talisman water to treat illnesses, from 5 buckets of rice to the White Lotus sect. But I can't stand the monks from outside who want to chant sutras. Obviously they are all the same thing, but some people just think that the things outside are better. When Dell's team arrived at the foot of Julong Mountain, they stopped. Then Dell himself was seen walking towards the top of the mountain step by step. He was really walking up the mountain step by step. Su Tong ate 2 buckets of instant noodles before Dell walked slowly. Go up the mountain. The breeze was blowing slowly, and his black priest's robe was fluttering. I have to say, this guy is really handsome. He has eagle eyes, a broad nose, and sharp edges. His long blonde hair is meticulously taken care of, and his neatly trimmed beard adds a bit of masculinity to the man. Coupled with this sacred and solemn priest's robe, he is simply the handsome uncle that girls call him. While Su Tong was looking at Dale, Dale was also looking at Su Tong. His gaze could penetrate the body and look directly into Su Tong's soul. When he saw the mark of the archangel in Su Tong's soul, Dale's pupils jumped slightly. Although the documents had already recorded the mark in the soul when the Holy Son came for the first time, when he actually saw it, Dale still felt there are ups and downs in my heart. At this time, the air was filled with the smell of incense candles, which made Dale very unaccustomed. He didn't know why these Orientals liked to burn such pungent things so much. After the two looked at each other for a moment, Dale finally spoke, walked up to Su Tong step by step, and kissed Su Tong's ring face. "Please forgive me for the offense. I should have come as soon as you arrived, but no, we happened to run into some trouble and was delayed. Although Bishop Simpson has stated your wishes in the telegram, I still hope that you can follow me back to the Vatican." Although Dale's words were very respectful, his tone sounded more forceful. Su Tong knew the urinary nature of these Westerners and spoke straightforwardly. Being able to speak so politely was because the other party recognized the special nature of his identity. Su Tong did not answer Dale directly, but asked, "Why do I have to go to the Vatican?" The Church has allowed itself to go to the Vatican more than once. If the first invitation was a kind of protection, then Su Tong now felt even more threatened. "The Pope hopes that when you come next, you will assume the responsibility of the Son and open the door to heaven." Dale took out a scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Su Tong. Although Su Tong could not understand the words on it, he could understand the meaning of the scroll. After reading it carefully, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Dale sideways. "The price is too high. What benefits can I get? Don't talk to me about dedication, I am not that noble." As he spoke, Su Tong simply acted like a rogue, sat down on the ground, took out a big smoking pole, and looked like he didn't intend to leave. However, Dale seemed to have expected this. After all, there were some records about the temperament of the Holy Son in the literature. Dale lifted up the priest's robe, took out a cloth bag from the pocket on his waist and threw it to Su Tong. After Su Tong glanced at the bag, he picked it up and weighed it in his hands. Then he opened it, and to his surprise, there was a shining golden gem inside. "You don't think I'm someone who can be bribed if you need money, do you?" Su Tong picked up a gem with doubts on his face, but after he finished speaking, Su Tong's expression changed. "This is not a gem, but a piece of extremely pure spiritual power. In order to make sure that I saw it correctly, I deliberately threw one into the prop book." Sure enough, Su Tong was surprised by the entries in the props book. Godly golden diamond. According to legend, gems were condensed from the thoughts of gods. After being repeatedly purified by the Church, they became unique items. It is said that after swallowing, the soul can be strengthened, the soul can be upgraded, and even if enough is swallowed, one can become an immortal instantly. The content of the entry is very concise, but the information revealed is surprisingly large. No wonder. Su Tong felt relieved. No wonder Dell's strength was so amazing. It probably had something to do with this thing. This is a deposit. As long as you agree to the Church's conditions, we can give you more gems like this, and it's not difficult to even directly help you break through the shackles." Dale said, taking out a contract. "You don't have to go to the Vatican, as long as you press your fingerprints on it." Su Tong took the contract in his hand and after scanning it carefully, he probably understood the Church's plan. "This is a soul contract. After pressing the fingerprint, a part of your soul fragments will be taken away as collateral. Only by completing the contents of the contract can you redeem your soul." Combined with the truth that I learned and the fact that all three religions are aware of the player's existence, the Holy See's plan becomes clear. "What if I refuse?" Su Tong looked up at Dale. "After signing this contract, I will be controlled by the Holy See like the eldest princess, Laudeo, and others, and there will definitely be players within the Holy See. Once the Holy See hands over the contract to the other party, I will be in big trouble. Dale was not surprised by this answer and casually threw another contract to Su Tong. The contents in this bag are still yours. If you sign this contract, the church will not embarrass you again. Su Tong picked it up and looked at it, and immediately smiled. He looked at the contents of the contract. What if I don't sign these 2 copies? The content of the contract is very simple. You can no longer have any contact or cooperative relationship with the gods of hell, otherwise, you will be killed by the curse in the contract. Dale frowned. Without any nonsense, he slowly stretched out his white-gloved palm, and the golden holy light began to shine in his palm. Then I can only forcefully take you back to the Vatican. I know you are a descendant, but I can imprison your soul so that you cannot leave. After being brought to the Vatican, the Pope will decide your life or death. Su Tong was not angry when he heard this, and slowly opened his hands. I knew you would be up to no good, but I am willing to wait for you until now. I just want to know if you still recognize this thing. Dell was startled when he saw the Pope badge in Su Tong's hand. His face flickered for a moment. A deep frown was drawn on that handsome face. You could see the veins surging on his forehead. It was only at the end that, Dell nodded helplessly like a deflated ball. Ha, then you have nothing to do here, go away. Su Tong blew out a puff of smoke and signaled that Dale could leave. This badge was returned to him by Chiao Qian. It was obvious that he had foreseen this day before handing the badge to him. It really means that there are people above who can do things easily. Su Tong sighed inwardly. Dale stared at Su Tong unwillingly. The church won't just let it go. You will always have to give the church an explanation for this matter in the future. After saying that, Dale left without looking back, not even asking for the godly golden diamond in Su Tong's hand. Hey, you got a bargain. Su Tong weighed the divine golden diamond in his hand and sighed in his heart. The church is still a big family and a big business. But for this matter, I can eat it for the rest of my life. After putting these treasures away, he planned to go back and make elixirs together. Otherwise, he would always feel weird and uneasy if he ate them directly. What a pity. I was really looking forward to it. As Su Tong spoke, he used the cigarette pole to push aside the grass on the side. In the grass, he saw the paper figures of Master Chi and Master 8 standing there. The altar and incense candles had already been placed. If Dell were to force it, he would be happy to see the result. After all, he now has too much money and no place to spend it. The worst thing is to call the mistress out for a walk. I believe she will be happy to stretch her muscles. Putting away the pair of paper figures for easy use next time, Su Tong stood up, patted the dirt on his butt, and stood on Julong Mountain to take another look at the land. Under the blue sky, you can have a panoramic view of the beautiful scenery. But the churches built in the distance and the military camps stationed there were particularly dazzling. Su Tong frowned. 100 years later, this will still be our territory. You will have to go back sooner or later. After that, Su Tong shouted in the team channel, return. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 904. Wu. The whistles of passenger ships echoed across the sea. Simon stood on the deck and took out a letter of introduction stamped with church paint from his pocket, but his eyes were focused on the new territory where the smoke was rising in front of him. Several priests stood aside, silently putting their hands on their chests and praying silently. These bastards. Seeing the warships with the Showbiz flag parked in the port, Simon finally gritted his teeth and returned to the cabin. Boom. 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 Church bells echoed over the new territories. The port of the wharf was filled with corpses and seas of blood. The Jap soldiers holding the Showbiz flag high pointed their guns at the blood-covered bald man in front of them. A man from the hall walked out with a big knife. Master Ben, stop resisting, the sky is changing, got it? Bah, I'm going to kill you. What's wrong with you? You're a traitor. Why didn't Master Do kill you all when he was here? Aubin held up a big knife, pointed at the other party and cursed. After cursing, he raised the big knife in his hand. "Brothers, kill these carrots." Bang 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 bang. The moment he finished speaking, intensive gunshots rang out, and the screen gradually turned scarlet. What came into view was the torn-apart gate of the Yuxing gang. The Yuxing gang was destroyed, and time passed by, and a new club hall was re-erected on the original site. He began to act as a lackey for the Japanese. A student on the street held up a newspaper in his hand and shouted anti-war slogans. Su Tong, the student, recognized it as Fang Jin, the student who had robbed him of a sum of money when he got off the boat. At this moment, his eyes were filled with fearless fire, even though he was soon pulled into an alley and beaten half to death. His face was covered with mud, mixed with blood. After getting up with difficulty, he carefully picked up the newspaper on the ground, wiped off the mud with his sleeves, looked at the photo of the anti-Japanese war flag held high, and then resolutely he turned decisively and walked out of the alley. I don't know if it's a joke of fate. When he recovered his health and came to the port again, preparing to return to his hometown and participate in the war of resistance, a familiar figure appeared in front of him. "It's you. Don't you recognize me?" Fang Jin was stunned for a moment. Looking at the middle-aged man in front of him, he thought he looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. The middle-aged man immediately took his arm and walked to a corner. "It's me. When we came to the new territories on a boat, you were pulled off the boat. Thanks to Brother Du for saving you, I was on the boat and didn't have time to get off." "Oh, it's you." When the other party said this, Fang Jin remembered and patted his forehead. "You are Zhang Ju, the owner of Zhangji Pharmacy in Kowloon." After the two reminisced about old times, when they learned that Fang Jin was going back to China to participate in the anti-Japanese war, Zhang Ju wanted to persuade him, but Fang Jin had red eyes. If the country is ruined and the family is destroyed, what's the use of studying? Seeing that Fang Jin had made up his mind, Zhang Ju took a deep breath, quietly took out 2 gold bars from his pocket and stuffed them into Fang Jin's arms. "Boss Zhang, this." Fang Jin wanted to refuse, but was pushed back by Boss Zhang. "I am old, and I will be a useless person when I go back. This money should be regarded as my donation for the anti-Japanese war." Bar. After saying that, Zhang Ju smiled again. "The Japanese asked me to buy medicines. This is their money. We are not black and white. We can always use it if we take it." Fang Jin was stunned for a moment and hurriedly said, "Then what should you do? Can the Japanese let you go?" Zhang Ju's expression darkened. "I'm old. I've had enough life in the new territories these past few years. The Japanese came some time ago and ruined the wife I asked for. If I can't meet you today, I just want to jump into the sea with this money. Kid, I'm waiting for you to come back, and beat these devils away." Fang Jin's eyes suddenly turned red when he heard this, and he reached out to take the gold bar. "Uncle, wait for me." "Well, wait for you." Accompanied by the sound of freighters, the two said goodbye to each other across the dock. Soon, accompanied by a gunshot and curses in Japanese, Zhang Ju's body was thrown into the sea by the Japanese. The picture gradually turned black, and Su Tong's mood became heavy for a moment. Even as a modern person, knowing the outcome of this period of history, when he saw the bloody process, he still felt hatred for the Japanese in his heart. Boom! 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 The bell rang in my ears again. It was the bell in Kowloon walled city. I saw wisps of green smoke in front of me, and the incense burner in front of the Dragon King temple was filled with yellow incense. Light rain fell on the sky. Members of the hall, neatly dressed in suits, surrounded the new leader. At the moment when the leader took over the leader's staff, a pistol quietly poked out its black muzzle from the crowd. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of a gunshot, the scene instantly became a mess again. Blood was stained in front of the Dragon King statue. Two dolls stood under the Dragon King statue. One was crying and the other was laughing. The world seemed to be only black and white at this moment, and the picture continued to turn black, with a suffocating sense of oppression. It wasn't until in the darkness that a familiar national anthem suddenly played, and along with a bright red flag slowly rising, the world in front of Su Tong seemed to come alive again, but the picture was frozen at this point. Ding! Congratulations on completing this script world, the rewards are being calculated. Congratulations to the player for completing this scenario, the mission rewards are being settled. Main Mission 1, Zhixingtang. Earn 1,500 script points. Main Mission 2, Non-Existent Clues, get 1,700 script points. Main Mission 3, Shrine, get 2,900 script points. Side Mission 1, Rose Restaurant, get 4,000 script points. Side Mission 2, The Truth About the Cave, get 4,000 script points. Earn 3 gold badges, 3 silver badges, and 1 bronze badge. Your certification rating has been improved. You are currently a LV3 certified player. You can check the permissions you have obtained. At this time, a prompt sounded, ding. It has been detected that you hold high-level privilege scroll super double. If you use this privilege, the income gained from this scenario world will be doubled. High-level privilege scroll super double. After using it, the income and ratings obtained in this script world will be super doubled. Note, this prop is not valid for LV5 certified players. This prop card was a treasure that I blackmailed from Mochizuki Epiphyllum by using the enlightenment pill to gain access to a big business. From chapter 10 of this volume. After Su Tong hesitated for a while, he didn't use it after all. After gritting his teeth and refusing, the sound of settlement continued. In this alliance mission, you kill 7 enemy alliance players and receive 4,000 script points, a gold badge, and the title, Battlefield Veteran. Please check for details. In this league standings, you rank first, get an additional 7,000 script points, and get a special prop card Dream Key. Please check for details. You have obtained the prop card Blood Grudge, please check for details. You have obtained the prop card. Please inquire for details about Dream Walk. Congratulations on obtaining the special achievement Evil God Terminator. Please check for details. After the settlement was over, Su Tong thought about receiving the goods and thought it was pretty good. But at this moment, a sudden rapid siren sounded in his ears. Warning! 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 You have seriously violated the rules in this script world. You will deduct half of the proceeds from the script. Your reputation in Hades has dropped to the point of being hated, and you have received a special title Hades Blacklist. You have a personal enmity with the Blood River Gate Control God, and the other party marks your soul. The next time you are near death, he will break through the boundary and come. You have an irreversible conflict with the Blood River forces, and the Blood River Shura lineage will have great hatred for you. Hearing this prompt, Su Tong showed a smile on his face. I have offended so many people in the underworld, not to mention Po Meng, even the 5 emperors and great demon kings, I have offended almost all of them, and I really don't care if there are 1 or 2 more. But having said that, this Blood River Gate Control God is also stingy. Among the people he has offended, there are many people with higher status than him, and he, a little trash, is still thinking about revenge. After a second thought, Su Tong suddenly began to grin and snicker. You are seeking death on your own, just wait and see if I find a chance to deal with you. The prompts finally ended at this moment. The sight in front of him gradually became clearer. Ding! The elevator door opened slowly, and when he took a closer look, he saw Chang Wuju and Li Bo standing beside him. The 3 of them still looked the same as when they entered the elevator. After the 3 of them looked at each other, they walked out of the elevator and ran straight out of the community. Without him, there is just one word, hungry. As a native of Chengdu, no matter where you go, the first thing you do when you return to your hometown is to drink soup. Along the way, Li Bo even hummed a ditty excitedly: beef soup, mutton soup, donkey meat soup, tofu soup, hot and spicy soup, smelly miscellaneous soup. Even though I am very fat, my favorite soup is still soup, a bowl of soup with a sesame seed cake, and a bottle of Sprite. I have to say that Li Bo sang quite well. Under the encouraging eyes of Su Tong and Chang Wogu, he silently chose to shut up. The three of them drove straight to Xianhe district. In the early morning and at night, only the Xianhe district has soup restaurants that are open. Only half an hour later, the three of them were already sitting in the soup restaurant, happily holding the soup bowls and drinking. The owner of this shop is also very interesting. He is guarding the soup pot by himself, playing his erhu, and he looks very happy with his mustache. The three of them ate and drank slowly for more than an hour before they walked out of the soup restaurant satisfied. This is a soup restaurant, and the unlimited soup has become a traditional rule that everyone has defaulted to. If it were another restaurant, if you drank the free soup for an hour, the boss would have become sullen. As soon as they left the hotel, they saw a patrol car with its siren flashing slowly approaching the three of them from one end of the street. With the car window rolled down, a police officer looked at the three of them and said, "Have a good meal and drink, go home early and go to bed, no fighting or making trouble." After saying that, he stepped on the accelerator and passed in front of the three people, rushing to the next soup restaurant. This made Su Tong and the other two people puzzled for a while. "Are we leaving tomorrow? It's better to go to the fifth courtyard first." Chang Wahen took out the jack mask from the prop book and put it on his head. He was so happy that he almost forgot that he was still a wanted criminal. The police car had just arrived and startled him. According to what they had discussed before, after the script world ends this time, they will meet Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai. Before leaving, Chang Wogu still wanted to go to the fifth courtyard to say goodbye to the old guys. "Okay, let's go together." Su Tong thought for a while and decided to go to the fifth courtyard with Chang Wogu. Even though he knew that the fifth courtyard had changed, he still had to say goodbye before leaving. "Boss, I want to go home and have a look." After thinking about it, Li Bosi decided to go home. His mother was still at home, and he had been missing her since she hadn't been home during this period. Su Tong thought for a while, and since it was still early, he simply accompanied Li Bo home first. "Wait until tomorrow morning and go to the fifth courtyard." After the three of them discussed the itinerary, they took the car and headed straight towards the old city.